Hey, what's up? It's TL Gamer, and this is basically a video I said I was going to make, and this is how I went about taking Zenimax Online Studios to court. And I figured there would be no better time to bring this up than right now due to what's going on with Google and Twitter and Facebook regarding Section 230. For those of you that are not familiar with what Section 230 is, it basically protects private companies, so to speak. I'm paraphrasing this. It basically protects private companies from what individuals do on their own platforms. So that's why you can't really do anything if somebody says something on a forum, but they can do anything that they want to you, and as well as the people on it. So before getting into this, I'm legally obligated to say I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I am not telling anybody to do anything legally. This is just very specifically the process that I used from pretty much start to finish and the entire thing I had to go through on exactly how I wound up getting Zenimax Online Studios into court. Now, I'm also legally obligated. I'm legally obligated to say this next thing, even if I don't want to, which I don't really abide by. I'm just legally obligated to say this because this is not how I feel, but it is a legal issue, so I have to say it. I am by no means, any way, shape, or form telling anybody to harass Zenimax or send anybody emails and derogatory, inflammatory stuff. As much as I would like to tell you that, I'm saying don't do it, and I'm saying that because I'm legally obligated to say it. My hands are tied when I'm talking about this, which means I have to say this. So I wish I could do it, but that's not really how this works. All right, so again, just to reiterate, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. This is not telling anybody to go out and do something, and I'm not telling you to do anything against the company. In fact, don't do it. Don't even send them emails about this or anything else. If you want to send them this video, I can't stop you, but I'm not saying to maliciously do anything to anybody, period. So that being said, one other thing. I'm also telling I personally will say, from my own standpoint, I will suggest to people not to buy anything that they do simply because of how they act. But that's my opinion. If you ask me what I think, I'm going to tell you that's just what I think. I'm not telling anybody to reduce the company's funding by any means, in any way, shape, or form. You spend your money how you want. Don't listen to me on that. But if you ask me, I will tell you I personally wouldn't do it. All right. So that being said, this is, again, involving Section 230. And again, Section 230 in the law was written back when Google and, Facebook and things like that, those major corporations just started out, which some kind of protection was put in place because they were supposed to be neutral platforms. So they had to figure out something that would allow them not to be held accountable or held reliable for what somebody posts on their site. That's why YouTube was originally the way it was before Google took it over. You could literally, if you had a problem with somebody, you had to go after them on your own. There was no intervention on it. Fast forward to 2020 now, there has been so much abuse of that system and so much garbage that it's literally become an actual issue because it's just, they're becoming basically publishers. When it gets to the point where you are pretty much one of the only three platforms that people to go to, which is basically monopolizing the market, you then become on a different scale. Even though you're kind of a private business, it's so on the verge of teetering being a publisher because of what is going on that they're literally voting and stuff in court now to yank out Twitter, Twitter, Facebook, and Google's ability for Section 230, which means if that happens, YouTube will probably get shut down because they're not going to deal with this horseshit after everything that they went through. They will literally probably either sell it or just shut it down. So that's one of the issues with that. So it doesn't just affect something small, it affects everybody. That brings me to the point on online games. So this brings me to what the actual issue is with online games. Okay, so there's a few things that you have to understand on how this works. And I did a lot of research on this, and it's an uphill battle. So what has to be done is you have to establish certain baselines. That's the first thing. And that is you have to dig out what exactly an online video game is. Everybody knows it's playing and everything else, but under the law, what exactly is an online video game classified as? It has an actual classification. So I had to actually dig out what the definition of what that definition was. In order to do that, I had to start looking at what's the communication level? What is considered, activity online? Just certain things. And then you have to look at the FCC, which is the Federal Communications, which also bumps into this. Because things like Discord is an online voice service. Skype is an actual phone service. So again, you're dealing with two online voice chats. One's an actual phone and the other's not. So there's different rules, regulations, and federal statutes for how these operate. So I'm taking you through and I'm explaining to you the uphill battle that I had to go through and why I know so much about this. Because I've also talked with several lawyers that were in various states that had online bullying laws. I mean, I went into everything you could possibly do. So this is why lawyers charge so much, because they have to look into very obscure things you may or may not even know exist. And there's a statement: ignorance is no excuse of the law. So this is why they say it's not advisable for you in court at any means to try to represent yourself. Any lawyer will tell you that. Lawyers need lawyers because there is no part of the law that every lawyer knows. So that's why you hire specialists in these areas. But when it comes to online, that becomes a very gray area. So if you look at stalking has a completely different definition of online stalking. Bullying has a separate definition of cyberbullying. They're both bullying, but they're two completely different definitions. So one of the things you'll find out that it originally starts out as, because they don't understand how the laws work, is that you have cyberbullying was an actual term reserved for children and kids. When it came to an adult, it was called cyber stalking. So there are two completely different sets of laws that govern these two separate areas, if you can even find a lawyer to do this. Most lawyers will never get into this because they don't understand enough about it. Even if you bring the case to them and you say, hey, this is what's going on, they're not going to listen to you. So you're basically on your own. And when you're on your own, you don't know where to begin. Fortunately for me, and I've said this plenty of times, I'm not a lawyer, but I was doing work for lawyers, meaning I was cleaning up their offices, taking trash out. I wasn't by any means a paralegal. I just happened to be in the office doing some work for them, cleaning. And in that process, you get to know the people, and obviously some of the people that hired me were I actually directly knew, and I was, raising money to go camping, things like that. So it wasn't like I was in the office working. When I say I worked under lawyers, unless you ask me what I mean, it's going to automatically assume that you're a paralegal. No, I never said that. So this is why you have to be very careful about the way you word things. This is why you have to be very careful about when somebody uses, and this is why I harp on people that try to use dictionary definitions when it comes to law. Those don't apply. A dictionary definition is completely different than legal. The law system does not recognize dictionary definition. That is why looking this shit up is such a pain in the ass, because it uses very odd terms. There are so many variables to look at, it's ridiculous. So let me give you an example on how obscure laws are when it comes to how this stuff works. Now, keeping in mind, everything I'm talking about, because this is an actual small claims issue for a business, there are certain things that govern that, and then there's certain restrictions you have that other states don't have, and you have to know what you're looking up. So, like I said, I spent a while going through all of this, but I had the time to do it. Plus, the state I was in because I'm on disability, it doesn't require a deposit. Like I could file paperwork in court for free. So that was another advantage I had. But I also knew how to go about looking up stuff in order to file the paperwork. So let me give you an example of how convoluted the laws get when it comes to this shit. Because this is, again, something people don't understand how the law works. So this is just a prime example of something in Texas. Okay, so when you hear the term driver and you hear the term speeding, a cop issues you a speeding citation, speeding ticket. Now, in Texas, this is strictly in Texas. This is just a small example of how ridiculous this is and why lawyers charge so much money. In Texas, a speeding ticket under the law that is written, forgetting about what you know as a driver, forgetting about what you know as speeding, the legalities of a Texas speeding citation, I forget what county it's in. It's in certain counties. This applies in certain counties, not the entire state, I believe. I could be wrong on that. But, so example, when you have a speeding citation and a cop will cite you for speeding and give you the ticket. You go to court and you fight that if you want to. However, this is where things get really screwed up and why you have to read the laws and why wording is so crucial and so important that this is why gamers argue with me and that's why I tell them they don't understand what they're talking about. Because when you're in, when you're in court in Texas for a speeding ticket, the law is actually written. And if you pull this out, you will win the case, period. There's no in-between on this, because you can say, oh, it was speeding and everything else. It's not about the laws. It's not about the ticket and the dictionary definition or whatever. It has to do with how the law itself is written. Case in point, when you deal with speeding, in Texas, a cop can cite you for speeding. Now, in your definition, in your mind, in certain states, speeding is going above the speed limit. You, as a driver, are put behind the wheel of a car. That's normally what it comes down to. In Texas, there is a very specific legal definition of driver. That definition is, if you are in a company vehicle, traveling to work in the company vehicle. That is what the legal definition of driver is. It's not somebody behind the wheel of a car. It has to be, wheel of just a vehicle. It has to be somebody that's in a company vehicle on their way to the job. Now, the citation for speeding in Texas has to satisfy two legal requirements in order for it to be upheld. And this is the part that's never read. And this is the part that matters. In Texas, a speeding ticket can only be issued, number one, if you are a driver and if you've gotten into an actual collision. Now, collision is actually what it states. The point being is that people ignore the and being in a collision. If you point out that the officer that wrote that ticket is not satisfying the second part of that, it's thrown out. In order for a speeding citation to actually be legally written, it's not that the officer can't write it. This is a mistake people make. It's not that it can't be written out and handed to you. It simply isn't valid because in order to write the citation, it doesn't say and or must be in an accident. It says they not only have to be a driver, but they also have to be in an accident. This is the wording that's really ridiculous that people don't cite. So people only cite the first part of it without citing the second part of it, but the law literally dictates when you are given a speeding ticket, you must satisfy the requirements of why the ticket is given in order for that to happen, which in this case is you are a driver, you are somebody in a company vehicle going to work and have gotten into an accident. It's not and or, it's and, which means included. Those two requirements must be satisfied. The point that I'm making here is that is just one law in a very small area of Texas that is so convoluted and so messed up that you have to know how to read this, how stuff applies, and the wording involved. So that was just an example of how tough it is to actually figure out what in the world you're trying to do or what is happening here. So that brings me back to the point on what is a video game? As what's it classified under law? Some people say entertainment. Some people say, well, it's a moving picture because that's what it is. Okay, great. The actual legal definition of a video game is classified under social media. Now, people can argue, how is that social media? Because the law defines what social media is consisted of. People usually are taking the term social media and applying it normally, which is Facebook, Twitter, things like that. However, that's not what makes social media. What makes social media is the actual legal definition of it, which is social media is classified as any online way to electronically communicate either by voice, video, or text chat. Okay? So what you have is video games that have a way to communicate are in electronically. Voice, text, or video is classified under law as social media. A video game is by definition under law social media. That is why 230 kind of applies to to video games, because this becomes a completely different aspect where you have a platform that everybody uses. But the difference is a video game company is an actual corporation. And so when you hear a publisher, the word publisher in that context actually applies to a video game company. They're not a video game company as in far as they're a private entity. They're actually a publisher. And even though publisher is classified under like what, as far as, this is where again things get a little complex. They publish video games. Okay, so a publisher is anything that's published like that in that regard. There's a couple of gray areas in here where this gets complex and why a lot of lawyers don't want to deal with this. So what you have is, how do you go about looking at this? Because video games are under social media. Now what you have to do is you have to start looking up the laws that govern social media, which are pretty much, there's a universal one because of the Department of Justice and the U.S. Supreme Court have already deemed these, but all the states have not adopted those, which means it's irrelevant. So now you have to start looking into what states adopt certain laws under the social media. Now, in people's defense that when they argue with me, you agreed to a terms of service or an EULA. EULA is an end user license agreement or electronic user license agreement. You can use either term, but that's basically what it comes down to. And if you ask some lawyers that give Q&As on terms of service, they will tell you that the lawyers that write them don't understand how they work. They understand how to write them as far as the laws go, but how they actually work is a different story, because if you wrote the laws in accordance to how they worked, they wouldn't be as convoluted as they are. There's actually a lot of loopholes and a lot of things that these terms of service and electronic user license agreements don't hold together as well as people think they are, because everyone's so used to the norm. So this is where things get a little really intricate and complex. I know I've said that already, but everything I'm saying just gets more and more and more and more intricate. You start diving down and basically start going down a rabbit hole, except the rabbit hole actually has an outcome. This isn't just randomly blindly going down stuff, because you could look at one thing, it could lead you down a completely separate path to laws you didn't even recognize. And so this is why lawyers need lawyers, because they don't know all the laws, and no one person does. So you actually need a lawyer that specializes in certain aspects of it to get around this, because they would know how to look up these obscure laws. And that's basically all this is. There's a lot of obscure laws. So people's defense are correct when they're arguing with me about the terms of service. In that regard, yes, you will never be able to get a game company on a terms of service that they write as long as Section 230 is in place, period. You just won't be able to do it. So how did I basically sue Zenimax in small claims court? Well, I'm going to put something on the screen to show you. The first thing you have to understand is they're a business. Are they an LLC? Because now you're getting into different various of these, you're getting into a completely different area. But regardless of the case, because it's a video game company, you can sue any game company in any state if they meet this requirement. The business breaches a contract with you that was negotiated or was to be performed in your state, and you can find a way to serve your court papers on the business in your state. Zenimax online media. Let me break that down and explain what that means. Zenimax online media. If you have to look up the small claims law, can you sue a business? And one of the only requirements to sue a business that's not in your state, is the business is required to have advertised and or sell goods and or services in your state. That's it. That's all it takes for that to happen. Now you have a small claims court case as far as getting reimbursed. That's how you're able to sue businesses in any state from any state if that criteria is met. Zenimax Online Media provides services for every country in the world, and they provide every state in the United States. That is why you're able to do it, because they advertise and sell goods and or services. They sell discs. They sell digital services that are available and everything. They advertise in there. And advertisement doesn't apply to just TV. If you are in YouTube and they are based in a place and YouTube's algorithm sends it for an advertisement for them, they decided because it's on YouTube and YouTube is statewide or countrywide and worldwide, the company is actually advertising the sale of their goods or services in your state. Even though it's on YouTube, it still applies. That's how things work, and that's how screwed up everything gets. Now, there is a problem when you deal with a civil aspect, which is why I'm bringing this up, because this also has to do with partly what happened when I took them to small claims court, because there were other issues involved here that I was going to attach to my claim, but I needed to find out how my claim went first, because the whole system for this and the whole process for this is when you take a company to court, they're going to fight you on this regardless of how small or big you are. They will literally tie this up for years. And the reason why a lot of people give up is because they don't have the time or money to be fighting that, and you'll just never get anywhere. Then the company will use whatever method they possibly can and within the legal bounds of the law to get reimbursed for all the time you supposedly wasted dealing with them. So when you sue somebody, they will put up a counterclaim, and the loser has to basically pay not only any fines or services, but they can tack on the court fees themselves and the filing paperwork. So you have to deal with all of this involved. So there's a couple of things. Now, when it comes to civil, there was let me see, how do I put this? With my specific case, what I was able to sue them on was breach of contract. And this is where things get really, really vague, hazy, and convoluted to the point where it's really difficult to explain this to somebody who doesn't understand this. So the first thing is hold on a second. Okay, gotta make sure that this is still going. Give me 1 second. All right, so anyway. All right, so sorry about that. All right, so what's going on here is that I lost my train of thought here. So give me 1 second. Okay, so the first thing is that when you click I agree to a terms of service, okay, gamers have this thing in their head where the terms of service only apply to the person clicking I agree, such as myself or you. If you install a game and click I agree, they think that only applies to you. That is completely false. The terms of service in the EULA is an actual digital contract. It's not one side or the other. It's literally an actual contract which is an agreement between you and the game company. This means both you and the game company are held accountable should anything in that contract be broken. This is called breach of contract. Breach of contract, legal-wise, means that either party that's agreed to a contract that's broken something in it is now liable for not upholding their end of the contract. That is the base way of how contracts work. Now, people like to argue, no, it's not. No, yes, it actually is. When a game company sets out a contract, they have said, here are the ways you have to abide by. This is the stuff nobody reads. And inside that area says what you can't sue them for, you can't take class action lawsuits, and it even goes right down to the point where if you actually have a civil grievance with this company, you literally cannot sue them from any place except their own jurisdiction. So in this particular case, if you want to sue Zenimax, you can't just have a small claims court and then tack stuff onto that because it's a completely different issue. They will literally make you sue them in Maryland because that's where they're based. You can't do this. Now, what stops that under law is something called the long arm statute. Each state has something different, but the long arm statute has a length of how far away a company is that allows you to reach that point of view. If each state has its own jurisdiction, so you'd have to figure out, if the court system even allows that, no matter where you are in the state. Massachusetts, which is where I was at the time, in Maryland, the long arm statute doesn't reach as far as Maryland. So I was not able to do that civilly. I would literally, if I was going to sue them civilly, I would have to go to Maryland to do it, and I'd have to do it in the jurisdiction that they're in. Now, that's written into the terms of service. However, that's an actual law. That's not a terms of service just because you click I agree. Whether or not that's in the terms of service has nothing to do with the law states that anyway. So this is, again, there are some things that are written in the terms of service and electronic user license or end user license agreements that are just laws. They're written in there even though they're laws. People are like, oh, no, that's a game. No, you're not agreeing to what the game company agreed to. You're agreeing to the laws that the game company has to abide by. So this is another issue I run into with people who like to argue with me is that the game company, the terms of service. So this is where people don't understand how it works, start arguing. And so that's why I'm kind of making this video, because there's a lot more to it and there's a lot more involved than people realize. And again, I'm speaking from personal experience because I got Zenimax Online Media into court and was ready to go all the way with them with this. And so let me back up here and continue explaining. The long arm statute prevented me from the state I was in from civilly suing them. I would literally have to go down and do that. So you can read it in the terms of service. It'll say you're only allowed to sue us in this state for personal reasons or whatever. That's a law. That's not, Zenimax didn't make that up. The U.S. Supreme Court made that up and allowed the states to, have their own jurisdiction and laws to define that, but that's basically a law already. So the issue here is that when you sue a company for small claims, there's a minimal amount you have to sue for. It won't even go through. You can sue anybody for anything, but that wasn't the issue. So you have to, when you're writing out the paperwork, you not only have to explain why you're able to sue the company on the paperwork itself, but you have to define out the amount. And you don't need to put that in, like why you need to do that, because now you're just giving away everything else. You can present that at court if need be. And so you just explain what's going on, and they will come up with their own countersuits. And the countersuit is usually there to deter somebody from going forward. And this is where people get nervous and afraid. I mean, this is just court. It happens. People sue each other every freaking day. Companies are getting restraining orders against companies. There's all sorts of stupid shit. Court just makes people nervous. If you sue somebody and lose, you just wind up paying them. You're not going to jail. You haven't committed any crimes. This is what makes people nervous. Companies have more money to throw at this to keep things tied up. And they can just keep filing stuff over and over and over again. So that is where I got lucky, because I'm on disability. The state I was in, if you were on disability, for said reasons, because I broke my neck in a car accident in 2005. So I'm not actually able to work. The court I had to literally go to court and prove I couldn't work. So this isn't something that is made up. This is on record. And so I had to hire a lawyer and things like that. So I went through the process because I had to fight it, because they're not going to get the state I was in. They only want to give you disability basically if you have a mental condition. It's very hard or next to impossible to get on disability for a medical problem. It's too difficult in that state. I had to hire a lawyer to do that. So my problem is that I broke my neck, and I literally had physical therapy. I had like all this information from doctors, x-rays, MRIs, things like that proved I cannot work. Like even holding a phone, I can't do it. So it's kind of like a pain in the ass. So the issue here is, because I was on disability, the state didn't give a shit what type of disability I was on or how I got on it. The fact that I was on disability is all the state cared about. So I can literally state I'm indigent. I can't pronounce the word, but it's basically you can't pay for your filing. So if I'm on like the court has a blanket thing that if you're on disability, it's it. So all you have to say is I'm on disability. They don't need to know what for. You're just on disability. It automatically states you do not need to. You don't have to pay for any court filings at all. Period. Between that, because I can't work, I had enough time, and I was free of charge for me to file the paperwork, and I knew how to file it. And I mean, I still had to get instructions and stuff from the people in the courthouse because I needed to know exactly what to write or things like that. Fine, but doing this poses two problems. If you have an alias online, like let's say your name was Lenny Bruce or whatever. Now what happens, no offense to anybody named Lenny Bruce, I pulled that name out of my head, so if your name is Lenny Bruce, sorry. But if let's say your name is Lenny Bruce, and you use an alias of Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo is not a real name. So when you're posting that on there, the game company can actually terminate your account because you used a false name. They've literally pulled that shit with me. It's freaking ridiculous, the shit that you just don't know. You find out, like, you don't even read the stuff in there, but it's amazing what they'll pull out of their ass. And so, I mean, it's just, it's like, really? So now when you're filing this paperwork, you obviously can't lie on paperwork because that's perjury. So, federal paperwork, court paperwork, that's perjury if you lie, like you misrepresent yourself. That's not legal. So you can get in trouble for that. So now the problem with that is when you file the paperwork, the game company now has all your information, but you have theirs as well. So it's not like this is an exchange. This is a legal exchange. So they can't use anything that you have to harass you, like such as emails. They may not like you, but now they can't use your personal information to set out vendettas on you. They're only allowed to use it for legal purposes and shit like that, as much as we'd all like to. That's a different story. Like, I can't say, let's say I went to court and lost. I can't then take the person's name I sued or, attach the name to it and then start plastering the name online. You just can't do it. It's just illegal. As much as you'd like to, you have to restrain yourself. So there's, like I said, there's a lot of other issues involved here. So anyway, back to what I was saying. The problem when you're trying to sue them civilly is because of breach of contract. Despite what gamers have been somehow led to believe that this terms of service is the God end all be all, that has final say. You agree? No. There are specific things that under Section 231 will protect the game company. However, there are certain things that a game company allows to go on in their game that actually breaches that, which makes that null and void when you bring it up to court as far as, the legality aspect of it, now becomes an actual case of breach of contract. Since they are a business, you can sue them, and then the chain of events happens. So what are you suing them for? How do you do this? And so my point on I'm going to continue getting into more details here, but my point on me getting Zenimax into court was the objective. Sure, I would have liked to get reimbursed, but that's a pipe dream at this point. The point I could have fought this. I mean, like I said, I'll go into more detail. But the baseline of it was getting them into court because I told them I was going to do it. Most video game companies and people online and things like that, I'm going to take you to court. Oh, go ahead. Nothing's ever come of it. This is why I tell people there is a difference between bitching about something you can change and then not doing it and then just bitching with something that you have no control to change. So I wasn't one of these people that just sat around and bitched. I bitched about it. I said something. I went ahead and did what I said I was going to do, and I followed through with it. I didn't fuck off because that's retarded. So my point being was, I think when I was first talking to this guy over the phone, he obviously started saying shit. I'm like, listen, you are not a lawyer. Stop trying to dictate to me what you think works. I said, go to your legal team and talk to them. Have them explain it to you. Because and what's going on is when you get into these debates with this was the customer service representative for that I don't want to say customer service. I don't know his title. So I don't want to misspoke on that. So he was somebody that oversaw North America for something. And I think Northeast, I'm not sure exactly what, but he was definitely somebody in charge of overseeing something. I think it was Northeast or all of America, or whatever. But he was somebody of upper stature. The fact is that, and like I said, I'm going to go over also the pattern, what was going on. Like I said, there's so many things involved in this. It's ridiculous. So anyway, let me finish. So I was basically telling him, don't go talk to your legal team. You're not gonna dictate to me how the terms of service work if you're not a lawyer. Period. And so that just, like I said, they have your information, you have their information, so forth down the line. Now, the long arm statute. Back to this. Because of I had several claims against Zenimax. One of them was the small claims issue, which is to get the damn thing in court. The whole reason I brought them to court was simply to get them in court, to let them realize that if you were going to fuck with me, I am going to push back, period. So there's a lot of shit flying around about why I was banned or why nobody whatever. Oh, you're causing trouble. That's a normal thing. This shit happens. The bottom line comes down to it. They don't want me as a customer, not because I was causing problems, because I actually brought them to court and did what I said I was going to do, and they realized that I was serious about what I was saying. I'm not one of these idle threat people. So rather than have me do that again, because I would have, they just said, we don't want you as a customer, which is a smart business move. I'm not gonna fault them for that, because I would have done the same thing. If you have a choice between getting rid of somebody that's going to cause you this much of a fucking headache, which is their fault anyway, you're not going to want to deal with the person. You're just not, because you're just going to get sick and tired of doing it. However, that can backfire too, because, I literally had them tell me to not call their office. But at the same token, I had emails saying if I had a problem to either email or call them. So they couldn't even get their information straight. I had one hand, they were telling me this, and I had another, and no, these weren't like one day they said don't call and sent an email. These were literally around the same time. It wasn't like one overrid the other. Yeah, sure, you can say, okay, well, we sent you this in this email. But I can argue that I didn't receive that email until then just because they sent it. The phone call is what mattered or whatever. You know what I mean? You just don't know. So the issue here with that was getting them into court. So the whole bottom line is I got them into court and they realized that they couldn't fuck with me. That is why they didn't want me as a customer, because I was going to cause them a headache if they fucked with me. This is unlike most people who get banned and I'm going to you get aggravated. You're like, I'm going to hack your account. That shit's fucking retarded. And don't do that, by the way. So I always tell people, if you're going to do something, do it. Otherwise, shut the fuck up, because don't talk to somebody about what you think something works when you've never done. I've taken gotten Zenimax in court. Plus, I've also filed against Valve, which I'll go into that in another video. But this particular thing is, you're not going to want somebody as a customer like me. You can say, oh, I'm a pain in the ass and everything else. But this is, again, gamers are so fucked up and they're so brainwashed that they don't understand how the shit works. That's why I'm making this video. So it shows you, again, the route I had to take and stuff I had to look up. So let me continue now on extending what the actual legality issue is. So as I've already explained, you'll never get a company on terms of service. Never will. Won't happen. So everyone's like, you agree to the terms of service. That the issue I took them to court for was not a terms of service violation. You'll never get them on it. What I took them to court for was breach of contract and a few legal statutes set by both the Department of Justice and the U.S. Supreme Court fueled my case. This is where gamers don't seem to understand that a terms of service cease to apply. So everyone's like, you agreed, you can't sue them. Yeah, absolutely you can. But what you're suing them for has to do with where you're suing them and what they sued them for. So let me explain the difference. Okay, so, and this is an example I use, and it's an extreme example, but it's to get the point across. So the first thing you have to understand is a terms of service protects a video game company under Section 230. And again, if you want to know what Section 230 is, just go look it up. For basic explanation, Section 230 is what prevents companies like Twitter, Facebook, and Google from being sued by their user base for what they put on there. That's it. That's all it is. Now, why does that apply to a video game company? Because as I explained, if you look it up, a video game is classified under law. This is not an opinion. This is an actual law. They're classified as social media. So how do you determine that? Simple. Social media is defined under law as any way to communicate electronically, video, or text online. Period. That's what is social media. People look at it, they hear the term social media and they don't understand what that is. Hold on a second. Somebody wrote something in here. Oh, no problem. I'm just educating people on, I figured this would be the best time to do what I'm talking about with Zenimax Online, simply because it involves Section 230, which is a major problem for Google, Twitter, and Facebook right now because of the elections and shit like that. So I figured this would be the best time to do this. So, because a lot of people, you don't hear about game players taking video game companies to court or companies because they don't think it's possible. So I'm explaining exactly what I had to do. This isn't legal advice or anything else. So back to what I was saying. This video is going to go up anyway, so I'm recording this as a live stream. So okay, so let me continue here. So what happens is the terms of service have been so fucked up, and gamers have been getting away with so much shit that they literally, if Section 230 was not in place, video games online wouldn't exist. That's the basic way it works. That is why gamers can usually fuck with people in a game and get away with it. It's the same reason why Twitter can fuck with one person, not another, because they're not a publisher. They're protected under Section 230, and this is where things get frizzy. And what I mean by frizzy is it's so hazy because of this gray area. This is why lawyers don't take it. You have to do your own research. So forgetting about hiring a lawyer, you have to know how to go about doing this. So what I did was I looked up what a video game is classified as, social media. That means even though a video game company is subject to, they're protected by 230 under that specific section, there are exceptions to what 230 applies to. This is where I grabbed my court case. Because number one, Section 230 does not protect a company or video game company or social media from breach of contract. Now, when you go to breach of contract, now you're getting into a weird area, especially digital, because there's so much shit off of that. So as you can start to see, it's branch after branch after branch after branch after branch after branch. It's like looking at a weeping willow tree and every one of those leaves and every one of those branches have an actual law attached to it that basically backs up to the entire thing. It's that much of a convoluted mess. This is why lawyers don't want to take it. So I'm going to explain this the best I can going forward. All right, so when you're dealing with breach of contract usually requires a monetary loss to do that. Now, when you buy a game, you are obligation to reduce, according what the game developer or, the terms of service you abide by. Now, this is why I've made videos on what actually is DRM. So DRM works as though it's digital rights management. If there was no EULA or terms of service, you could just do whatever the fuck you wanted on a platform. The terms of service is the DRM. It's the digital right, the management of the digital right you have for that contract, which basically tells you how the platform you're agreeing to use it. If you did not have a terms of service, you could just fucking do what you wanted, and the company wouldn't be able to fucking do anything. So you are literally bound to that service by the terms of service, which is the DRM. So people think DRM is some form of security. No, DRM is the way to get online, but that's governed by a terms of service that you have to agree with and how to use that service. So that's how this works. Now, when in the case of what I took Zenimax to online media for was breach of contract, but there was a very specific section in their code of conduct that they broke. Now, again, I'll reiterate that when you're dealing with a terms of service or clicking I agree to something, gamers misconstrue this, and a lot of people do, because people look at it as you are clicking it. That means you are agreeing. That's not how that works. That's the terms of service are not a one-way attribute. They apply to the company who gave you that information. So, let me give you an example of, I'll use what happened to me, and I'll explain this. So I just want people to understand that people can argue all they want, but when you click I agree, that is putting your digital signature on something. And so you are agreeing. That becomes an actual contract. A video game company that puts out its terms of service is saying, these are the terms that we want you to agree to, so we have already agreed that this is how our system is set up. Now we want you to agree to it. By you clicking I agree, you have agreed to the company's services, but the company is now obligated to provide those services to you. They are held liable. They are held liable simply because they are the ones who came up with the contract that says this is how we are going to be and we expect you to be. People think it's only you to them. No, that contract in itself applies both ways. Not only are you agreeing to their terms of service, but by agreeing to it, that means the game company now must apply what you agreed to everybody else. The game company is now liable for providing everybody with that terms of service. The game company's not exempt from you fucking off. They are under 230, and this is where things get screwed. Okay, so as I explained, Section 230 protects people, Google and things for websites that are entities from what the users put on their websites. Base fact. So if I put on, I'm going to fucking, I'm going to go burn down whatever, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. This is an example. So if I say I'm going to do something drastic and I put it on the website, the company's obligated to remove that, but they're not held liable if I go do it, even though they knew it. So you can't use that argument. Now, if they don't have the protection of 230, they're fucked because they can't allow that, because now they are explicitly responsible for knowing I put that on there and then allowed it to go up there anyway. So this is why publishers get fucked on this, and that's why you don't see these same problems. You'll see arguments on forums, but a forum is not a publisher. But when you see these arguments on Twitter, how are they allowed to get away with them? That is because under the law right now, which is what they're trying to yank out from Twitter, or they're trying to change what Twitter, Facebook, and Google is that they are not publishers. They are private companies. And this is where the argument gets fucked. Because why can't you do something about Twitter? Because they're a private entity. You cannot sue an employee for not hiring you. A private employer can absolutely, it's unscrupulous as is. When you are in a private entity, you can do whatever the fuck you want pretty much within legal grounds. You're not allowed to harass somebody and things like that, but you can't say, if somebody calls somebody a nigger at work, you can't sue them. The company's like, great, he called you a nigger. Don't like it, leave. But he called me a nigger. Okay, great. You know what I mean? So there's like so many weird things in here. However, if you are a publisher, you cannot say that. That's actually illegal. It's weird how like publishers get held to different standards even though they're both the same thing. That's just how the law works, and that's why this is so fucked up. So, continuing on. This is where there are certain things that the terms of service don't protect the company on. And one of them is cyberbullying. Now, as I stated before, this is kind of changed. But when the internet first came out and people had these problems with people, harassing people, there were literally two terms for it. The first term was reserved for kids, anybody that wasn't an adult. The second term was for adults. Both of the terms meant the same exact thing. They just had a different wording for them. So when you dealt with kids, it was called cyberbullying. When you're dealing with adults, it's called cyber stalking. Now it's just called cyberbullying. However, there are very few states that acknowledge that as an actual law. This is another thing that you have to look out for. But that no company in the United States, and I can't speak for outside of the United States, but no company in the United States, if a financial transaction is done between you and the company, or the company or whatever, they are not breaching that contract becomes a legal issue, regardless of what that contract is. iTunes, whatever. Now, here is where things get really fucked up as far as the contractual agreements. Okay, so now that you're dealing with the contracts, now the laws are set up where the structure of the contract becomes an actual problem. So what I mean by structure is that this has been changed now where both of these things are pretty much legally equal. But beforehand, when I took Zenimax Media to court, there was literally two separate structures for an online contract, which is clicking I agree to anything. A forum, when you click I agree, is an actual digital contract. The question is, what is legally what can be legally upheld? So the first thing here is you have to look at the structure and the setup of where the contract is. Back then these things still apply, but they're both kind of equal now. And one of them is called a click browse agreement. The other is called a click wrap agreement. Now, back when this was put into play, you have to look back at both are legally binding, but there was one in particular that made it an actual like you couldn't get around this. Like if you had a contract that was click wrap, you are now legally obligated. So there was an actual case. If it was click browse, you could argue back and forth. So how would you determine this? You have to go back and look at the law that Bill Clinton signed into law in 2000, which is called the Digital Signature Act. This means that what constitutes an actual legal obligation that can be held up in court, and that was a click wrap agreement. So the difference between the two of them is a click browse agreement will allow you to browse through the terms of service without having to scroll through them to have the I agree or next or whatever button show up as highlighted so you can click it. You can just click it without scrolling through the terms of service. That is called a click browse agreement. A click wrap agreement, the reason it was legally upheld is because you couldn't get the button to show up as active in order to click it without actually going through the terms of service. Whether or not you read them, not a valid point. The fact that you had to scroll through to the end to actually get that button lit up is the point. So whether or not you read them, you just scrolled down the list and clicked it. Those were the two separate things. And the law that Bill Clinton signed into law in 2000, the act Bill Clinton signed into law in 2000 was called the Digital Signature Act. It made click wrap agreements legally binding in a court of law. The click browse agreement was iffy. So if you had a company that did a click wrap agreement and they broke it, you had a case, period. Well, you have a case regardless of, breach of contract. You didn't have a case for anything. I mean, fucking hell, the district attorney can indict this fucking face cloth. I mean, it's so dumb. But the point being is that as you're starting to see, there's more to it than just you clicked I agree. There are literally laws in place that govern everything that I've talked about and how you have to do things. Is it out of state? What's it called? What's a video game classified as? How do you go about doing it? What can you attach to it? Does the long arm statute allow you to reach civilly? Can you attach a civil case? There's so many degrees in this. It's retarded. That's why I tell gamers they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And that's why, again, I'm making this video. And so, for the most part, on the surface, gamers are just... The reason why these terms of service in online games are so fucked up is because there is no actual laws governing what video game companies are allowed to do. So that's why they can favor people. They absolutely can. As much as that sucks ass, they can do it. So people like, well, what did you get banned for? You must have had a reason. I've made a video about this, about video game companies and people's accounts. A video game company can just shut your account down with or without a reason. Not even having a reason is a reason. You can't fight them on it. There's nothing you can do. That's why when I took them to court, I had to go outside the confines of what the terms of service are. So their argument in court would be a terms of service argument. My argument was an actual legal argument that came from both the U.S. Supreme Court and the Department of Justice, which was I was being cyber harassed. Cyber stalked, if you want to call it that. Now, this wasn't just one thing. This wasn't a few words exchanged. This had been going on for 6 months. Now, people could say, grow up, blah, 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 blah. Okay, everybody gets heated online. Everybody says stupid shit, blah. Fine. But what happens is this now becomes a federal issue, not because it's federal, as in, okay, you're just making shit up. This, because it's an online game company, and you are in North America, and if you have a choice of going to Asia, North America, whatever, wherever you bought the game from, whatever country you bought the game from is where that is based. Now, what happens is the game company can say, okay, whatever. Now, it's one thing for you to be saying shit online, but the FCC now gets involved. This becomes a federal communications issue simply because of communication across state lines. This is an FCC thing. So as you can see, this goes beyond a terms of service. This is so far fucked up. This is why nobody wants to deal with this. Somebody's like, you went through this? Yes, I went through this because I wanted to get my point across to these companies that you need to stop fucking with people thinking you can get away with this shit. It's fucking ridiculous, the stuff that they're going on for. So that's why I articulate things, and that's why people who just want to say, oh, you clicked I agree, it's not that simple. There are so many things involved with this. So as I said, it's like a weeping willow tree. If you look at it, there's like branches and leaves, and it's just a convoluted mess. That's how this is. So that's the best way I can give the description so you can look at it. If you don't know what a weeping willow tree is, just look up a picture of it and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So anyway, the point being is that, first, there was a breach of contract issue. Because they broke a breach of contract, because they were allowing people in the game to do things that were literally a federal crime. This was not an in-game thing. This became a federal crime. The reason it was a federal crime is because the FCC is now involved in this, because the FCC gets involved, which becomes federal as soon as whatever you're doing crosses state lines. And because it's the company's game, and they are refusing to do something about somebody who did something, knowing they did it, they are now held liable because they are not providing me, and this is what I said, when you agree to a contract, the company is now obligated to provide the player with that harassment-free environment. So when you read it, it's as goofy as it sounds, and people can make fun of this all they want. This is the reality of it. And so when it says in Zenimax online terms of service for Elder Scrolls Online, that's why I have this listed in Elder Scrolls Online, because that's where this incident happened, and you can say, oh, you're a baby, whatever else. This has nothing to do with anything. Nobody in their fucking right mind is going to let people committing felonies against them, regardless of whether you want to call somebody crybaby or not. This has nothing to fucking do with it. This has to do with, and I'm not the only one speaking for this, there are tons of people who get bombarded by this shit in games every day. That's why I make these videos, to let you know you're not alone, but there is something you can do about it, regardless of what the fuck's in the terms of service. But if you're going to go after the company, you have to know what you're doing. Don't go fucking haphazardly. You're in an uphill battle with this, and you may not even win. You might get fucked over. You can actually wind up getting arrested for doing whatever because they could probably pull something out of their ass. I mean, that shit happens. Don't be nervous when you go to court. That's the point. I wasn't. I didn't give a fuck. My point was made. I got them in court, and that was it. So that's what my goal was. So anyway, back to what I was saying. So why the FCC is involved is because it crosses state lines. If you're in California and I'm in, Massachusetts where this happened, you have now crossed an entire country of state lines. You have committed a federal crime because it crosses state lines. People think like felony, federal. No. Federal just means the jurisdiction of where it's covered. That's all it means. It's nothing bad or good. It's just federal means, that's it. But when you say federal crime, it's a felony. That's what felony means. It's a federal crime, which means it's not a state thing. States can't get around that. It's an actual felony because cyber stalking, the definition of cyber stalking, there is a legal defined, I can't even speak. The U.S. Supreme Court and the Department of Justice have defined legally what cyberbullying is. This is not, and this is where shit in the terms of service stop applying certain places or code of conduct. Cyber stalking and cyberbullying, whatever you want to call it, has already been legally defined by the U.S. Supreme Court and the Department of Justice. There is an actual legal definition that has already been made. Anybody in a game company cannot then dictate what they feel is cyber harassment or cyber stalking. They can't do it. It's not a valid argument because what has already been defined, they cannot then redefine. So one of the arguments that I always have with people, or one of the things that I was bringing up in court, and it's a very strong one, is you cannot have a video game company telling you what the laws are, and that's exactly what was going on. That's how you argue this, because if people are, once you bring this up legally. Sorry, let me back up because I'm going off on a tangent here for a minute. I'm kind of going off in a different direction. So let me explain something. I always tell people companies do things illegally every day. They do immoral, legal shit. That is totally irrelevant. If you're sick and tired of something, do something about it, or you don't have any business complaining. That's what I always tell people. It doesn't matter whether a company does something illegal. You can point shit out illegally every day. People do that shit. The only thing that matters is, are you doing something about it? And if you do something about it, that is the only time it matters. Otherwise, it doesn't fucking matter. You can bitch all you want. So that is why I always tell people, I don't give a fuck what your opinion is. This is what the law states. I know because I did this. Now, again, this is my procedure. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just telling you what you're up against and what I did to circumvent this, because every state has their own laws and things like that. So when I went ahead and did this, I started with the breach of contract, but I had to look up what everything was. So again, I sent the paperwork out, blah, blah, blah. Now they have my information, which also now they can't use for malicious purposes in the same way you can't. You can't tell somebody to go to somebody's house and do it. There's a bunch of shit involved. Like they can't sell your email because you decided to fucking sue them. As much as you would like to harass them, you just can't do that, because that's why when you do that, you make sure that you're only using this for purposes of legal intent, and that any other use of this is you will get charged and prosecuted, and they won't be able to do anything about that. So what happens now is, this, as I said, this becomes a felony because it's crossing state lines. And this now involves the FCC, because the FCC monitors any online communication. It only used to apply to phones and recorded messages. But now, because of the day and age, it also applies to social media, because you can reach anywhere in the world with it. So again, this has to do with the United States. So this is where things get really fucked up now. No, all right, so written to be used in a corp. Oh yeah, absolutely. There's no question about that. That's why I tell people, if you're trying to sue somebody on the terms of service, you'll never win. You won't win. That is why I took the route I did. Because if you take a look at the entire structure of my argument, you'll realize that it's not a terms of service argument. It's not. It's fucking ridiculous, because what I did was, this wasn't a simple month. This wasn't like a 2-time thing or a week thing or a day thing. No. These people were literally actively seeking me out in the game. I literally called the company and told them, I need to change my name. I cannot get away from these fucking people. And so I literally went out of my way to do everything I possibly could to get away from these people. And they still found me. Like, these people were hunting me down in the game for the sole purpose of making my online experience so fucking miserable that I would quit the game. Unfortunately, they made the mistake of targeting me, because I became fucking retarded. And that's not advisable, but I was literally on the phone. I had Bethesda and Zenimax on the phone. It was fucking ridiculous, the conversations that went on. Ridiculous. And so I literally wound up finally telling the person who was overseeing something that I am not going to sit here and have you tell me I have to tolerate being taught. Well, you're saying stuff, I says, and you refuse to look at why I'm saying this stuff. I says, I told them my ignore list was filled. They go, your ignore list was filled? I said, yeah, if you're too stupid, and I said this, I said, if you're too stupid to understand what is going on, the fact that I had to use ignore, then you have some serious problems. But I am not going to sit here and have you tell me that I have to tolerate being talked to like that, and if I say anything back, I'm in trouble. I said, that's not how this is going to work. I said, if you want their chat dealt with, I says, then you need to deal with these pricks and get them out of the game. Because I am not going to be tolerated being talked to like this and then be victimized by you guys. I said, this isn't happening. Well, I says, I'm not going to get into this with you. I'm not listening to this because you're biased, you clearly don't give a shit, and this has been ongoing for 4 fucking months. This was the first call, like the first couple of calls. This went on for an additional 2 months. And so they got cute. And so let me so I'll get out what you have to look for and like how to argue. Now, just because you have a strong case, that doesn't mean you'll win. I very well could have lost. But if you take people to court, you have to be prepared that they're going to go in front of the judge. I'll get to that in a minute. But basically, what wound up happening was I was literally being tracked down in the game. I was literally had people actively seeking me out. Zenimax Online Studios knew this because I had this videoed. I had pictures of the chat. I had multiple instances. I had emails and everything else. Now, Zenimax, this is the problem when arguing with me. I have a mind to understand how legalities work and understand how things work. So the average person isn't going to be able to intellectually argue with me. I know that sounds cocky, but if you listen to anything I talk about, I bring up sides of an argument you can't argue against using your own arguments. Not you, but so for example, if you look up the video 10 things idiots never apply to their own arguments, you'll see what I'm talking about. And so, people like to argue these points, but they don't like to bring in the other side. So what I do is I find the one fucked up thing you can't argue with that uses your own concepts, and then I present that to you and say, okay, what about this? It just shuts up the argument because you can't do anything. So I'm literally hard to argue with, and people don't like that about me because I don't talk in circles. It's like, don't tell me you're helping me and then talk in circles, and when I point it out, go, oh, yeah. No, that's not an argument. So that's why I always bring up, that's why people fucking hate my videos when I bring up the stuff about the games. I have the screen open. If nothing's written in text on the screen, don't say because you understand it, it's explained. Show me where it says that. And nobody can argue that because I have the damn thing open. So my point is, I argue these points that nobody can argue against by bringing up a very basic fact using their own arguments in a situation they can't argue against. So that's a dick move to do. But if you're going to be a dick to me, I'm going to be a dick back. So this is where the separation of, and I'll get to what I'm getting at in a minute because a lot of people don't understand how to argue these things in court. Now, first of all, when you go to court, if you're dealing with a small claims court, any lawyer will tell you this. It is not a smart idea to go in front of the magistrate if you have to, or the judge, because usually there's a magistrate first, and usually if you need to, you go in front of the judge for whatever reason. It's not a smart idea to do that. It's usually a good idea to mediate it between the 2 years with a mediator in court or whatever, and then file the paperwork when you get in line so you don't go in front of it. It's just not a good idea to do. Whenever possible, you want to mediate it and get it out of the way. Any good lawyer will tell you. If a lawyer tells you to go in front of the judge, no. That's just not a good lawyer. So I'm not giving legal advice. To me, that's not a good lawyer. So, all right. Anyway, so what wound up happening? This went on for 6 months, and they knew about it. And so when I reported the people, I had video, I had text, I had pictures, I had everything. I even had, like I said, I had gameplay footage. The same people had been doing this for 6 months. This is now a criminal act. It's no longer a online, I hate you, shouting match. This became an actual felony. What Zenimax was allowing to happen in their game was a felony. They were in breach of contract because in section 2.3 of the Code of Conduct, I can pull it. You can look it up right now. In Section 2.3 of the Code of Conduct on Zenimax Online Media, and I still remember this to this day, it literally states you are not allowed to infringe on another person's gameplay to the point where they are unpleasant. I paraphrase that, but if you look it up, it's under behavior. Section 2.3 of the Zenimax Zenimax Online Code of Conduct. Read it, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So people don't understand what this means. If you infringe on somebody's gameplay to the point they literally are having this problem that I was having, that is a complete violation because it's no longer a code. This isn't a code of conduct violation. This now becomes a criminal act under federal guidelines and statutes. And so that is what the issue is. So they can argue, it's a terms of service. You violated this, you violated that. Now go over some of this shit that you want to laugh and see how fucking ridiculous this is. But I'm also going to do this to show you the extent that a game company will go to. So you don't find this shit out until you're in court, but that's okay. So anyway, the point is that is a federal crime at that point. For that long, for that amount of time, them knowing it and them not doing anything about the people and then actually painting me, telling me I have to tolerate that shit? No. I says, if you do this again or you take action against my account because I'm telling you about this, I will take you to court. Because now they're shutting down the account, which would normally be okay, but suing them in court for the monetary damages for that particular reason is what allows me to sue them, besides they're a business. So even though they're in Maryland, and I happen to be in Massachusetts at the time, you have to deal with what the small claims court system allows. Now, as I stated before, what was going on at this particular case was an actual civil incident, which means I had to take direct action against the company itself or the individuals involved. That means, because there's something called, as I stated this before, there's something called a long-arm statute. That each state has their own laws on that, so you have to look that up in your own state. But that dictates what allows you to govern something civilly. Now, in the terms of service of most games that most people don't read, if you were going to have a civil discourse against a company or an individual online or whatever it is, you have to, it says in there, you can only take them to court in their own jurisdiction. Now, that's written in the terms of service. However, that's an actual law. So game companies, people reading it's like, well, game companies doing that. No, game companies wrote that in there because that's an actual law. That's not something that's not made up by a game company. That's actually on the books as a law. If you want to sue a company civilly, you literally have to, law states, yeah, you can only go across state lines to a certain extent. But if you're going to sue them civilly, you literally have to not only go to the same state they're in, but the same jurisdiction in their own court systems. It's fucking weird how that is. So that is the issue with that's the issue with the long arm statute. And that's just, like I said, one of those things. So I actually had a civil issue where if they had pressed this in court, I would have turned around and sued them, slapped a civil suit against them, and I would have grabbed all of the chat records that they had and subpoenaed them in the court case, and I would have fucking won that case hands down. Not only would I have won the case, but the fuckers that were harassing me would have been fucked as well. So, but again, it was one step at a time. So be prepared when you go to court that even if you try to mediate it, even if you're the person that sued, are suing the company, even though you mediated it, if you try to get it mediated and they say, no, we want to go to the magistrate, make sure that you're prepared to go before that because they will fuck you over. And so just to give you an example of what actually happened with the court case, my whole thing was to get them in court, which is why they don't want me as a customer. Not because they can't, you're a wuss and you got bit. Yeah, I'm a troublemaker. Not that I'm a troublemaker in online. I was giving them a headache by pushing back against shit that they were doing that was not right. So that was, and on top of it, it was illegal. What they were doing, allowing their game, was a criminal act, period. It was felony. So, because it's not just about one or two times. This was ongoing for 6 months. So it's not that simple. So, and so when you are proving harassment, you have to prove a pattern on what goes on. So let me explain. about how you have to look at this. Okay, so first of all, they had a counterclaim against me. They had a counterclaim against me for $7,600. Oh yeah, I was suing them for $2,000 because that was the minimal amount allowed. If I only could get my money back, I wouldn't want. I don't want to sue them for $6,000. I'm sorry, for $2,000. But I had no choice because that's the minimal amount. If I was going to take them to a small claims court, that's the minimal amount I have to sue them for. So that wasn't me. That was just the law. So I went in there, and when they met them in court, and so I was feeling their lawyer out. I was feeling their lawyer out to figure out like what was going on. So when I pointed out that the contract that they were trying to say I was in violation of or anything else, I told him, you do realize that's a click wrap agreement, right? I'm like pointing down like I'm talking. Okay, so I said that's a click wrap agreement. He hesitated. He goes, yeah, I know. He had no fucking idea what I was talking about. No clue. I guarantee you after he left, he did. But I specifically said to them at that point, I says, listen, we both know that if we go in front of the magistrate, this is going to be a mess. I says, it didn't cost me a cent to file this paperwork, plus I know how. I says, if you want to go before the magistrate, that's on you guys. I will be more than happy. I have enough evidence in my bag right now to quash that counterclaim. I'll explain what it was afterwards. But the point is that I says, I have enough evidence on me right now. I says, I'm not here to make you believe me. I says, you can believe me if you want. If you really want to test me, go in front of the magistrate and I'll do this. Now, this was not calling their bluff. This was not one of these things that I was bluffing them on. I actually had enough evidence in my bag at the time to actually get the counterclaim thrown out. Like every single point they had the counterclaim, I would have gotten thrown out. Simply because of the instances involved in the evidence I actually had on me. Now, I said to them, we can go in front of the magistrate if you want. And if need be, I will ask to go. I told him, I says, I will go in front of a judge and subpoena all your chat records. I says, I will subpoena all of them. And I says, you are going to file something, I'm going to file something, and we're going to go back and forth on this for months. I said, if you want to do that, you're going to come up with something, I'm going to come up with something, and I says, this is not going to end well for you guys. I says, I'm here in court, which you didn't think I was going to do. I says, so if you want to press the issue, feel free. I said, that's on you. But if you want to end your claim, I'll end mine, and we'll go our separate ways. That's all I said. Now, I was not bluffing when I said I would have buried them, because this would have went beyond the point of, like, I'll explain what I was talking about afterwards. So they stepped aside. Now, keep in mind, this is after I already talked to the lawyer, because I was looking at this stuff, and I'm like, really? They're trying to use this? Oh my God, this is totally ridiculous. So I'll explain it afterwards. This is fucking unbelievable. The shit I'm telling you, the shit that they pull is fucking ridiculous. So, they got, they said, oh, we'll go talk, all right, whatever. So they came back and they says, okay, that's fine. We'll leave it at that. So they filed their counterclaim. We went up. We agreed to dismiss the case with their fake claim on file, and we went our separate ways. That's the smartest thing to do in a court case. Now, people are like, you didn't win. No, I wasn't there to actually go to court with them. I was there to get them in court. But at the same time, I had no problems going in front of the magistrate because I wouldn't have gone in front of the magistrate. I would have went straight to a judge. This is not a magistrate issue. This was a judge issue, and I told him that. I says, I know what I'm doing. I says, I don't really care whether I'm not here to get you to believe me. So we can go in front of the judge if you want. I said, I'm going to go in front of a judge. I said, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go in front of the judge if you do this. So, and I says, I'm going to file something. You're going to file something. If you really want to go on this route, I says, I will go to no end and I won't stop. I says, so we know where this is leading. And I think you can tell by talking to me, I'm not just somebody that walked in off of the street. So that was the end of that. Now, that wasn't me. Again, that wasn't one of these things that, oh, shit, I hope they don't call my bluff. No, I literally meant everything I said, and I literally had every backup. I could back up everything I was saying. So the point being is I got them into court. After that, I went back in the game again like a few months later, and they found out it was me. And then they're like, all right, we're done. We don't even want you in the fucking game anymore. If we find you in the game, we don't want you as a customer. We find you in the game, we will ban you. You're done. Permanently. So I told them, fine. Stop sending me advertisements in the email for your game. Take me off every email address I've ever used. Take it right off your list, because if I find an advertisement in your game, I'm going to sue you guys. You've already clarified you don't want me as a customer. That is perfectly fine. I won't. But you are not going to send me advertisements to this game in any email I've ever made for this game, including the beta. I says, that's not my problem. You need to find it, dismiss it. If you don't want me as a customer, it is your job to disconnect every email I've ever had for this game, including the beta. That's it. It's done. Because if I find an email advertisement from you guys after you telling me you don't want me as a game, I will sue your ass. And you won't win. I said, this time I won't back off. Because you're not going to have a counterclaim against me. I said, I've already agreed to this. So that's how it is. So that's basically what it comes down to. So they didn't want me as a customer simply because I pushed back and I was going to become a headache for them. So yeah, I was a pain in the ass to them, but not in the regard the same way everybody else is. Yep. No, so the thing here is that okay, well, all right. So I have to clarify something before I just go off on this because I still need to go over what Zenimax was doing with their counterclaim and stuff like that. I want people to know this because this is a very, very in-depth issue. It's very complex. It's very whatever. So I just have to make you aware that if you're watching my videos are not to slam the company by no means in any way, shape, or form. You can dislike a company. I fucking hate Valve, and I will slam Valve, but there's a reason for that. But when it comes to like other game companies, it's just lazy development. Now, all I do in my videos is I point out inconsistencies with the game. That's why I call them shitty development. Because if you're going to put something in a game, you got to explain it. And this is something gamers don't seem to understand either. So anyway, the point is that when you're watching it, I'm not slamming the company. I'm just saying this is shitty development because they should have done this, this, and this. So when you take apart my videos, they may piss you off. But that's not going to change the facts on exactly what I'm talking about. So like I said, you have to kind of step back, have an unbiased thing, and realize that and follow along what I'm saying to see that everything I've said in all my videos are correct. Some of it's comical because it's so stupid, like how the hell can this even go through, to some of it is really fucked up beyond belief. So anyway, that's basically what I just wanted to clarify that I'm not telling you, I'm not going after the company. I'm just saying the company's fucking stupid for programming it like this. All right. So anyway, back to what I was saying. Now, here are some of the counterclaims that Zenimax did. And I'll be giving you examples on the stupidity level of what the comparison is. Okay, so part of the counterclaim Zenimax had, they actually had the audacity, okay, to say, my complaints were interfering with their ability to get work done. Really? Okay, fine. So they literally, the outline of one of the pieces in the counterclaim was stated because I had subjected a couple reports from the same people, and I was right. When are you going to remove these people from the line? When are you going to remove these people? You say this isn't allowed, you're allowing it to go on. What the hell's going on? So if they're using multiple accounts, that's not my problem. In other words, the report system is not my problem. So I kept reporting everything that everybody did, every single little thing, and there's a reason why I did that. So yeah, you can say in a sense, I clogged the report system. Now, they literally, okay, so let's say this is the office building. You have person A, B, C. You got a floor of people. Let's say there's like 5 people on each floor, and let's say the building's 5 floors. So that's 20 people altogether. They literally took the complaint and went from person 1 to 3 up to the second floor to 6 to 4 to 1. Then one on the third floor, separated to 2 other people. They literally did that up the building and then had the audacity to say I interfere with their work because that's how they chose to do the complaint. So because they decided to go to the complaint and do it that way and involve that many people, because apparently the report was too complex, they literally tried saying because my reports were going in that way, and they chose to give them to the individuals who they gave them to, or whatever route that they did, that I was responsible for taking their pay. Let me explain what the equivalency to that is, and this is where my defense with this part of the argument comes in. If you send a reply or a complaint to a corporate office, the corporate office is going to send that complaint through a chain of people. The corporate office is not going to charge you because they chose to do that chain of events. They cannot blame you because they have a way to chain, through something to a chain to say you cost them money because it's their way of sending the chain through the complaint through the chain of people. That's literally the equivalency of it. It's my fault that they chose to use the people that they did and involve them. So I cost them money because because that's the way they chose to go. Again, that's like you putting a complaint in corporate against the way McDonald's works and then getting charged for it. That's literally the equivalent. That's how dumb that argument is. So it's my fault that they did their job, but okay. Now, the other part of the problem with that argument, if they wanted to continue, was nowhere was I ever told, either by phone or email, that if I did that, I was going to get charged. So if I wanted to do that, they never said that. And the icing on the cake, which kills the entire argument, is because I actually had several emails from the person who did this saying, if I have a problem with somebody in the game, to use the report system. I had 3 things that crippled that argument. That's just 3. And so, let me get into it. It's dumb. I'm telling you, that's literally part of the counterclaim. So now we get into the other part of the counterclaim, where account sharing. Okay, fine. But the problem here is that, and this is gonna show you how fucking ridiculous game companies get when you challenge them. They will pull shit out of their ass, and they'll be right with what I'm about to say is absolutely correct. Okay, this they can ban you for. Okay, so when you create an account, an alias online for a fictional character, right? So let's say, we'll just say Charlie B. Sorry if anybody's name is Charlie B. Sorry, I'll use John Smith, generic name. So if you put in John Smith and you're from, X, you're from, like, I don't know, some made-up place like Quantanoga, Arizona. Let's say it's not even a place. You're from, like, Quantazona, Arizona, whatever, Quantico, Arizona, whatever. And you make this whole shit up. They literally tried saying, that's not my real name, so they can ban me for that. Oh, yeah, it's fucking ridiculous. So, my reply to that, or that specific argument in court, would be, they had known about this since the very first thing I sent them, which was months before. They waited at least 4 months for this particular aspect. They waited. So it's interesting to really see game companies scraping the bottom of the barrel with these fucking arguments. And that was in their counterclaim. Because now, like I said, they can bar you from that. But my rebuttal to that would be, you knew I wasn't the real person. You knew I was doing this, and you knew this 3 months ago. Yet you chose to allow me to remain in the game, but yet you did nothing about it. And now you're trying to say, well, you used this false thing. That's not my problem. That's on them. If they choose to let me go, that's not my problem. That right there kills their own argument. I know that sounds weird to say, but that's pretty much it. If you're going to use an argument, you have to basically structure it so you don't look like a fool. For them to say, that's not my real thing, you violated this code of conduct. Well, if you knew I violated it and you are literally kicking me out of the game because I took you to court, then you should have kicked me out of the game months ago when you knew I was violating the terms of service. So you're cherry picking how you want the terms of service to apply to let whatever it has happen. So the reason that you left me alone in the game, because you got pissed off I was using a fake alias and you let these people come after me, knowing what they were doing. So, I mean, the point here is that you're pissed off at me, but you allowed the blatant harassment and now federal criminal acts to happen against me, but yet you're saying you knew this was a problem and I was in breach of contract. So if you're going to get rid of me for breach of contract under one condition, then why did you let it go on for this long? That doesn't even make any sense. So the point on this is that, like I said, I had video evidence, I had emails, I had everything under the sun for key points, ranging from here's an email from you directly telling me if I have a problem to use the report system. And now you're trying to charge me for using the report system because you're trying to say I abused it. Well, if you had gotten rid of these people that you should have gotten rid of, because 6 months is more than enough time because you had all the information and you let it happen anyway, you're not going to charge me for that. That's not happening. So the point being is that you're dealing with companies that are this ridiculous and have this many, sneaky bullshit tactics that they use. And that's why I said, you got to be ready to fight this stuff. So I knew pretty much everything that was being thrown at me by them. And I knew how to combat it. Now, keeping in mind, if this had gone in front of a judge, I may not have won. Doesn't matter how convincing my argument is. It matters is it's really opinion. So you have to take that into account. I very well still could have lost. That's absolutely. As good as my arguments are, and as valid as they are, that doesn't matter. They could probably pull out some archaic thing out of their ass that I wasn't even aware of, and that could bury my case. But my point still stands. You can't, if you're going to use stupid stuff to argue with and try to sue somebody with, then I'm going to point out you're being an asshole, you're being a fool, you're being retarded. And on top of that, to try to dictate, one of the main things here is that if they're going to use the terms of service as a weapon, that's basically what it is. It's terms of service as a weapon, really. So if they're going to use the terms of service as a weapon, my argument for that, when I say argument, I don't mean yelling. It's just argument means contrary position. That's all it means. Take up a contrary position to debate. That's what it means. So when my argument or rebuttal for game companies wanting to use the terms of service under the conditions that I took them to court in. This is only under the conditions I took them to court in. If you are going to allow a video game company to dictate what cyber harassment and cyberbullying is, despite the Department of Justice and the U.S. Supreme Court have both defined it. By the way, I had those laws printed out as well. I had this paperwork on me, so it's not like I wasn't prepared. I was fully prepared. So the point being is that if a game company is going to use a terms of service and say, well, you agreed to this, well, inside your terms of service, I was being blatantly harassed. Like, this wasn't like a thing that, because proving harassment online is difficult. Like, it's so hard to do. But this wasn't a small thing. This was 6 months of, evidence I had. Now, I'll get to something else in a minute that I would have pulled out of my ass that I don't think that Zenimax would have been able to recover from at all. So, like I said, you have to be prepared to go to court. So, the next thing that you come up with, depending on the way this goes, is that if they're going to start using the terms of service as a weapon, you're going to go through everything that they put in the terms of service, and they do that to tie it up. But if you can cripple the entire terms of service to make their argument completely invalid, even though their counterclaim is in here, their counterclaim revolved around the terms of service. I had something that invalidated the entire terms of service. So, Well, I don't want to say invalidated it, but what they were doing was ridiculous. And like I said, I could have proved it through certain things. But anyway, the point is that to allow a game company to dictate their determination was I was not being harassed, which is why they didn't remove them, is now making a mockery of the legal system. What that means is if a game company is going to be allowed to determine what the U.S. Supreme Court and Department of Justice have already defined, then you are literally dictating that game companies can define law. That's the argument you use. And so, I don't know how well that would have held up, but that's the argument. If you see where I'm going with this, you'll understand why that's hard for a game company to argue around. Because you don't get the determination, or that's why we decide or we deem or we can determine. No, there are things that they can't determine because the law has already determined them. You can't dictate what online harassment is under your own opinion because both the U.S. Supreme Court and the Department of Justice have actually dictated what online harassment is. You don't get to determine that by your own opinion just because of current terms of service say it. Now, here is the other thing that I want to get across before I get into one final thing about proving harassment. At least I can prove that they did this to me, not just in the game, but there was something else. I'll pull up the pattern and show you. So let me get into the second part of what's going on here. Okay, so a terms of service, again, as I stated, or an EULA, or code of conduct, only applies so far. There are things that go outside the construct of that actually they can't use. So case in point, one of the examples I use is this. If you're a business owner, and let's say you go to apply for a job. Now, the reason why I'm not saying male or female is because that's irrelevant to this fact. The fact is you go to apply for a job. Now, you get everything in writing. You sign it. But in the agreement that you're signing, first of all, you're not going to sign something you're not going to read. So this is the difference between an actual thing in writing on, that people do, that put differences in their head about what they're reading in front of them and then what they're actually clicking to agree with online. They're the same fucking thing. Both of them are contracts. You're going to read one and not the other? That doesn't make sense. But I know why people do it. That's why these terms of service are so fucking written so long-winded that nobody wants to pay attention to them. So anyway, let me continue. So let's say you go to apply for a company and you agree. They have some agreement that you have to abide by the company. Some companies have an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. Some companies say you're not allowed to use Twitter on business when you're at work. You're not allowed to mention business on your Twitter account. There are things that there are because, that's the way shit happens. So those are contracts that you will sign to agree to work for the company. Now, you are entering that company's agreement voluntarily. Ben Shapiro talks about this all the time. You're in a voluntary contract, which is true. But what I'm now going to add into that is that if people want to use, and this is what when I said I bring up points about an argument you can't argue with me about, that if you do, you look foolish. Here's one of those points. So gamers love to throw around, you clicked, I agree. That's why I use this business thing. So, okay, fine. Let's take that and apply this. You cannot cherry pick what you're applying that to. So if you're going to say, because somebody agreed to it and you're in their terms of service, that it somehow invalidates it, then explain this. In the company you signed the agreement to, it says on the piece of paper that you are literally signing that you have to allow the company to sexually harass you. Yeah, that changes things up a bit, doesn't it? The point that I'm making is sexual harassment is illegal, period. It is completely irrelevant whether you agreed to the terms of service or not in the company. If you did, you're an idiot. But that's besides the point that it's still illegal. So, if you sued them in court, gamers will go, well, you clicked I agree. No gamer in existence will argue that sexual harassment is okay in a job place. They will literally tell you no after they just argued that you clicked I agree to a terms of service inside a game. So my point being is that when people are going to use I agree or you click the terms of service defending game developers, then I'm going to pull that out and explain to you, you cannot argue that a terms of service is okay in this situation and say sexual harassment is okay. The point here is that it's not relevant whether you click I agree. What is relevant is what the law dictates, and that is where the gray line comes in. So now, how do you prove the harassment that I was going through? Okay, so first of all, you can't really prove it. You can prove a pattern through the history of how things operate, which is then you base your argument over, but that doesn't actually prove the harassment. All that proves is that there's a pattern of behavior that is malicious towards somebody depending on what the situation is. And that could go either way. You could say, okay, I don't like being showered with gifts. Somebody's going to look at, well, it's gifts. But if somebody said they're harassment, like, why are you harassing her? The concept's exactly the same. If you keep following somebody around and they giving them gifts or harassing them, That's still the same thing. You're literally following the person around. Why is one accepted and not the other? Well, they're just gifts. What harm can it do? That's totally fucking irrelevant. I told the person to leave me alone. So, it's interesting to watch people's viewpoints change, but when you bring up points that they can't argue with, it's funny to watch the arguments that they try to use. So, in this particular case, I had video evidence of these same people doing the same thing. They would show up in the same zones in the same exact place I was, rallying people around using multiple accounts, I found that out, to literally find me. And I had their chat records, like online. I had videos of their chats. I had screenshots, everything else. And this is where subpoenaing the chat records from the game itself comes into play. Now, for 6 months, the same people were doing the same pattern of events, targeting me consistently, over and over and over and over again. I had 156 accounts in 1 week. Oh yeah, it was ridiculous. That was 1 week. Never mind, whatever. So Zenimax says, we had, 15 reports of you. I says, I have 157 from these people that were harassing me that you knew about. So don't come at me with, I reported 15 people when there's 157 reports. I said, do you want to start trading data? We'll do it in front of the judge. So, the point being is that this is the pattern of the players. The problem they were going to run into with this is that pattern that they allowed the players do spilled over into the staff when they were contacting me over the phone. Okay, case in point. I specifically told certain people to leave me alone, and I specifically told Zenimax to get these people off my back because it was now had gone into 3 months at this point in time. And I says, enough is enough. Stop talking to these people, or I don't want to hear what you have to say when I'm saying stuff back because I'm done being polite about this. Now, keeping in mind, this took like 6 weeks for me to even get to this point. This was just 6 weeks of me ignoring them, and Zenimax knew this. So now, what happens is, that pattern continued in the staff itself when they were calling me. So case in point, I told the guy, I left a message to say, I need somebody to get back to me to discuss something about my account, but I don't want him contacting me. I don't. They knew I didn't want him contacting me. Now, what happened in the game was when people were contacting me, they were looking for me to nitpick arguments so they could trigger an argument so they could start the same shit over and over again. That's the pattern that was going on. Every single time they engaged with a conversation at me, it would start off the same exact way for 6 fucking months. The same people, the same statements, the same thing over and over and over again. And these weren't small comments. These were like malicious comments. And this isn't me classifying what I think is malicious because I'm unbiased when it comes to things. But if I say something's racist or has a racist tone to it, it's racist. Because you should hear some of the jokes I say. The jokes I say will even make offensive that people that say racist jokes go, that's fucking offensive. So my point being is that I don't say something's offensive or a crude remark just to say it. If I'm saying it, it's because it is. It's not like I can break down some of the shit they were saying. If I don't want to misquote it, I have some text, but I don't know where they're in a video right now, but I'm not going to bring up the video. But my point is, sorry, my fucking throat is dry. I got to get some coffee. Okay, so the pattern of what they were doing was they were looking for me and then starting shit with me, knowing I told them to leave me alone. So these same people were coming after me specifically after I asked them not to. Now, once you ask somebody to stop bothering you, now it becomes a legal issue. Because it's like, that becomes stalking. It's like if you tell somebody not to show up at your house, they literally have now been told do not show up at the house. If they keep showing up at their house after you told them, now you have a legal issue against them. Because it's harassment. It doesn't matter what they're doing. The fact that you told them to leave them alone and they kept coming after you. And Zenimax knew this. They knew these same people were doing this. Now, what happened is, when I called Zenimax, I said the same premise. Call me back about something, except I don't want to talk to him. Do not contact me with him. Do not have him contact me. If you have to have him contact me, then don't contact me at all. So it's not like I'm telling him what to do. I says, if you have no choice and you're going to let him contact me, then don't even contact me. But I need to talk to somebody else aside from him because I don't want to talk to him. Keep him away from me. They called me back, and it was him. He deliberately knew I didn't want to call him back, and I said, if you don't want to call me back, don't call me back. I said, I don't want to talk to you, so if you have to call, don't call me. He deliberately contacted me to taunt me. He did that multiple times. So the pattern here isn't just with the people in the game seeking me out. The pattern spilled over into the staff, and they started doing the same exact thing the people in the game were doing after they were specifically said not to. Not that that matters, but the point here is I've proven a pattern of purposely and willfully, maliciously going out of their way to fucking try to piss me off to say something. So it's one thing for players to do it in a game, but now staff doing it over the phone, no. So my point being is that that is the entire argument for the structure of how the harassment case was. It wasn't one thing. It wasn't a segment of, here and there. It was a 6-month time frame, and then it also started doing it with the staff. So as I said, these are all the laws and how I went about, going through Zenimax and things like that, it's just unfortunate, but this is the way it is. So until Section 230 is removed from existence for certain corporations and things like that, you're going to keep seeing this shit over and over and over and over again, and there's nothing you can really do about it. So if you, my suggestion that if you start getting followed online or whatever it is, cut your losses and leave the fucking game. Don't subject yourself, stay in the game, be stubborn, because I could have left the game. That's what the argument was, but that's not the point. I refuse to leave the game until they reimburse me. I'm not going to sit there and give them money, which, by the way, was another thing that they fucking tried adding. They tried saying, you're the only one with your ignore list filled. I would have found other people that had their entire ignore list filled as well. But the fact that they literally tried saying, I basically barely spent any money, isn't even a valid argument. You're the fucking one that has it free. I'm not obligated to spend any money. I got the base game, so fucking what? And so they, to prove that is an invalid argument, because the second time I went into the game, I got 15 people to get into the game. So them saying, I'm not spending a lot of money, that doesn't matter, because I since you're using the argument last time of, hey, you weren't spending enough money, now I'm getting people to spend the money, and that argument, that still wasn't good enough. So it didn't matter which end of the spectrum you're on. They're just literally going to try to pick shit out and make, a big deal out of the stupidity. It's fucking ridiculous. And so I basically don't really have anything else to say on this, but I just wanted people to understand, it took me almost, 2 fucking hours to explain this, because this is a very intricate process. And I wanted people to know, when you go into court for these things, that these companies, not that these companies can't be sued, they absolutely can. But these are the minimal tactics they're going to use, and they're going to fucking try to bury you. The problem is that it's not worth your time. So you have to be careful about what you're doing. Again, you have to pick and choose your battles. But the overall concept here that I'm making a point on is, if a company pushes you and you push back, the company's not going to want anything to do with you. They want people that aren't going to make waves for them in this regard, and they're going to let you, and they want people they can walk all over. Okay? So, to be honest with you, what really needs to happen in all these online games to stop all this horseshit is remove general chat and any type of public chat globally from the game. Don't even allow it to fucking happen. And I'm not saying remove chats altogether, but if you remove global chat, you remove 99% of the problems that are caused in games. Now, people look at that, well, that's a bit extreme. Yeah, it is a bit extreme. But here is the thing. The people who are against removing global chat are the ones that are harassing people online. So, case in point, online games don't need an actual global chat. They're not needed. The game can function completely without it. You still have private messages, group chat, and other ways on the forum to generate. Well, how are we supposed to do this? That's not the fucking point. The point here is if you look at any online game, it's a walking code of conduct violation. Pretty much 99% of the things in the chat are basically, there's stuff that actually goes against the terms of service. It's not even supposed to be being said if you're going to follow the terms of service. So part of the problem is why gamers think that this stuff doesn't apply legally is because nothing's been done about it. And the reason nothing's been done about it is because there's no oversight in the gaming development. There's no oversight at all in the game companies. If there was a governmental element that stepped in and told the game companies, no, you are going to apply your terms of service. You're not going to favor anybody. If you're going to say that that is not right, then you need to ban these pricks for doing the same thing. Don't favor anybody. Everybody's treated equally. If there was some government entity that forced that to happen, online games would be completely different. Because instead of the normal, comment you say, oh, I'm not going to have anything happen. Instead, you wouldn't stop the problem. But the conversation about what happens if somebody says something would be completely different, and that's a base fact. The only reason that this happens is because enforcement of the terms of service and code of conduct are never applied. And I don't mean applied equally. They are not applied. Okay, I agree to that. But this is what you have, and I'm not disagreeing with that. I agree to that. The problem here, that what you just said is only true for a fraction of the players. The shit that goes on in general chats far outweighs what you just said. Therefore, because there's so much bullshit going on in the chat, and people are going out of their way to irritate people, to get them to swear and do all this other shit so they can mass report them because they don't like them, and using, the report feature as a weapon is why general chat needs to be removed. In a decent game, yes, what you said works. However, the shit, that small piece of what you said does not overshadow. This shit overshadows that. And because there's more of this than there is of what you just said, general chat doesn't belong in the game because nobody knows how to use it. This is like putting candy in front of a 3-year-old and saying, don't touch the candy, leaving the room and then watching what the 3-year-old does. 3-year-old doesn't give a fuck. He's going to grab the candy. So the problem, again, okay, let me compare this to speeding. Gamers somehow have the mentality, because nothing's done, they haven't done anything wrong. That's the comparison of, if a cop watches you speed and doesn't pull you over, you've still broken the law. It doesn't mean that you're not speeding's illegal. You can argue, I didn't get pulled over. That's not an argument to say that speeding is illegal. Speeding is on the books as illegal, period. There is no sub-argument you can use for that. Saying, well, a cop didn't pull me over, I have never gotten pulled over for speeding, is not a valid argument. That's you can't use that as an argument. It's not a valid thing. So my point is like gamers say, because I didn't have anything happen, that doesn't matter. If the terms of service say you broke it, you broke it. As I said at the very beginning, companies do shit that's illegal all the time. None of that matters. It only matters if you actually take action against it. Otherwise, don't bitch. So there are things that people have control over, and there are things that people don't have control over. Case in point, if there's a language filter on a game, and there is a block or ignore feature, you have control over your own chat. What you choose to see, what you choose not to see. And what's going on in these games are fucking, if I tell you some of the shit that's going on in these things, you might change your mind on things. I'm not here to change anybody's mind. I'm telling you what goes on in these games. So let me ask you, and this is to the viewer as well, for later purposes. Let me ask you, do you know how the ignore feature works in a game? Block, ignore, mute. When you mute another player or ignore another player, like type /ignore their name or right click on their name and use ignore. Do you know how that ignore feature works? Most people don't have a clue how that works. And I'm not talking the coding on it. It's kind of like a weird phrasing of the question. So let me explain. Ignore is not a two-way thing as people have been led to believe. Okay, so let me explain. I'll explain about ignore. And when I say this, you'll get what's going on. You don't have to retract your message. Okay, so if you don't like what I'm saying, all right, so let me use my own chat as an example here. Let me use the stream as an example. I don't use moderators in chats. The reason I don't use them is because I am not a babysitter. If you are in my chat and you don't want to listen to what another person says, block them. I'm not here to tell you what you need to listen to. I'm not going to have somebody else tell you that. I don't give a rat's ass who you are. Well, you're going to, your LinkedIn point. Guess what? Don't click the fucking link. If you wouldn't do it in your email, don't use the chat as an excuse to say, well, you should, no. You have control over your own chat. Do not blame somebody else because you decided to do this. So if you choose not to ignore somebody, you don't get to bitch about what that person's doing. You just don't. And I don't feel bad for you. Fuck off. You're an asshole, fine. If somebody's going to be an asshole, that's not against the law. If you don't like somebody being an asshole, guess what? Don't interact with them. But if you're going to taunt somebody and then piss and moan about the reaction that they get after you fucking started something, fuck off. You get what you deserve. And my point being is that too many people become abusive when they get mod power. They don't have any fucking common sense. And so you'll see this on forums a lot. You'll see topics getting destroyed. And who gets fucked is the one giving the reaction because nobody gives a fuck about why the reaction was caused. Everybody's doing stuff that's against the terms of service. So it doesn't matter what the reaction is or it matters what caused it. If you remove what caused it, the reaction isn't there. I don't understand why that fucking concept eludes people. But let me go back to what ignore does. Okay, contrary to what people believe, ignore in a game is a one-way thing. It does not. No, fucking Reddit is a cesspool of the internet. It's below Steam. Anyway, I'll get into that afterwards. All right, so ignore is a one-way block. Meaning, if I'm in a game and I block you, I can no longer see what you're saying. Whether it's mute, ignore, block, whatever term you want to use. I can no longer see what you say. However, you can still see every single thing that I say unless you block me. The problem here is people that are weaponizing ignore know this. So what they will do is they will start shit in a game, knowing somebody, getting anybody to reply so they can then target the fucking person, cause a storm, and then use ignore. What then happens is they will proceed to slander that person consistently, over and over and over again, hopefully knowing that the person didn't ignore them, so the person can see every fucking thing that this person is saying, so they use it to free reign harass people. They are literally weaponizing ignore. It is fucking retarded. That is another reason why I said global chat and zone chat or whatever chat that can be globally seen does not need to exist. Because people are causing problems on purpose. I'm sure everybody's... See, what I'm talking about, every single person has been on the receiving end of this. So for people to not understand what I'm talking about, they're lying. Every single person in a game has been subjected to this. Everybody has. Some people just choose not to reply. But that's not the friggin' point. The point is, you shouldn't have to block somebody that's breaking the rules and then not having anything done about the people breaking the rules. There is literally nobody you can turn to. And that is why you will find streamers getting swatted. You will find game companies are getting DDoSed because of this. That's illegal. But that doesn't change the fact that since these people, I guarantee you, every single person that's been swatted on stream live has fucked with one of their viewers in the same way I'm explaining. They pushed them because they're a streamer. They abused their authority. They abused their fucking mod systems. They fuck with the person. They say shit. Because if you watch any streamer that gets fucking pissed off at a person, their mod times that person out, and then the person on stream continues fucking with them for 15, 20 minutes, knowing they can't reply. So, in that regard, that's weaponizing it. If you have somebody on ignore, shut the fuck up about them, and it shouldn't even be in the game. Ignore does not, if you have ignore, the report feature should cease to exist. So my point is that if I use, if I go into a game and I don't like what you're saying, if I don't block you, that's on me. I cannot then turn around and blame you because I dislike what you're saying, and then if I don't like it, I use a report. If I was any one of these game moderators or whatever it is that got these reports that said so-and-so did this, this is what I would reply to them. Unless it's a direct threat or something of terrorism or child porn, which are the only three things, by the way, that'll get you thrown off of this channel or banned. Like actual threats of violence, like actual terroristic activity, and anything of child porn. You will get thrown. I will ban you from the channel. Those are the only three things. Other than that, you can say whatever it is that you want. I don't give a fuck if two people are arguing about sport. I don't give a fuck. Because if you don't want to listen to somebody, you block them. But the point being is, if I was getting these reports from somebody on this, and I looked at that, and somebody goes, so-and-so said this, I would reply to the person who sent the report saying, I will suspend your account if you use report for this again. You don't like what somebody says, you use ignore. I am not going to sit there and have you use a report to antagonize somebody when you refuse to use ignore. Now, again, depending on what's said, threats, actual threats, threats that can be actually, followed through with, not some like, I'm going to paint your ass blue or anything else, or like child porn or, like actual rape and stuff like that. Like those are different. Those are cases that there's no excuse for. But if somebody wants to talk about somebody's mother, go right fucking ahead. I don't give a shit. Now, here's with me. I have an autistic daughter. My daughter's autistic. So, when you said the word autistic in this, this is no offense to you, but you didn't use the word correctly. You're using the generalized definition of the word. Now, I'm not going to throw you out of my chat. You know why? Because that doesn't bother me. Even if you used it right, it wouldn't bother me. Do you know why? Because I can't stifle you while you having to listen to me. That's fucked up. Anybody that thinks that way is fucking retarded. I'm sorry, they just are. So the fact is that I have an autistic daughter. And so people are like, well, you used the word retarded. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? That's like people trying to mend an argument. I get what they're saying, but, well, you use the word retarded. Yeah, you use the word autistic. What's the difference? So my point is that most people that use the word autistic don't even know what they're saying. They're not even using it in the correct context because it doesn't even make any sense if you understand what the word means, like the actual definition of the word. If you understand what it means, you will see that people are just copying shit that doesn't even make any sense. So it's not that it doesn't bother me because nobody uses it, right? Just they're not even saying it. So it's literally meaningless. So when people get into these arguments about what is, what's offensive and everything else, this is kind of like the online, the shit that happened with Zenimax online. What's construed as offensive. But this doesn't have any offensive. This has to do with their actions toward me. So there's a difference between, rallying people to ignore somebody. So case in point, these people were also not only trying to alienate me by getting me to leave, but when they were following me around in the game, saying the shit, they were literally saying, place me on ignore, place me on ignore. Okay, so people could say, well, you're allowed to say that. Oh yeah, you're allowed to say it. But guess what? It doesn't change the fact that now it's targeted harassment. You are literally targeting me by telling other players to ignore me. That's literally invoking pretty much a mob against you. It doesn't physically harm you, but that's not the point. If you do that to somebody who has like an unstable mentality, you can literally harm them mentally. That is literally a crime. Even though it's fucking weird to say that, but I think you understand what I'm saying. So the thing here is this is all the stuff you have to take into consideration when you're dealing with this stuff. You have to look at all of the basis of things and stuff like that. You have to become rational to the point where you have to step outside the confines of society. And so there's a quote. Now, here's the thing, okay? Let me clarify something. When somebody brings up something that somebody said, case in point I did, you feel the need to defend yourself. You don't. You can say whatever it is that you want, aside from rape, actual threats of violence that can be, followed through with, terrorist activity, and child porn. Sorry, there's 4 things that I'll get you banned from my channel. You don't have to justify why you said it. I don't care why you said it. It's words on a screen. I don't know you. Even if I did know you, it wouldn't fucking matter. You ever walk up to one of your friends and give him the middle finger right in front of his face? Friend doesn't get offended by that, but why does a stranger do it? I mean, it's like, the stuff is fucking ridiculous. Yeah, I understand the concept of, like, not, pissing people off, but people don't look at what they're doing as a whole. And this is the stuff I talk about. So you don't need to justify that. You don't even need to tell me you weren't a native speaker. I'm just telling you, you're using the word incorrectly. If you want to continue using it wrong, that's fine. Go right ahead. I'm not telling you what to say. My point is, I wasn't harping on you. I'm just saying, from my own perspective, sorry, I should have clarified this. From my own perspective, people like, well, you used the word retarded and have an autistic daughter. What does that even have to do with anything? Yeah, I do. And? Well, they're trying to convolute because they don't, I don't want to say they're not educated enough, but even after explaining stuff, like even after this entire video, people will still say the terms of service matter. With anything I talk about. It doesn't. You're never going to talk to people that cannot get these concepts. And I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying in general, you don't need to apologize for anything. See, when it comes to like online games and anything else, you'll find something about my channel. People love to try to tell me, oh, a game developer isn't required to do anything. And that is wrong. They absolutely are. There are certain things within the confines of a paid product that apply. And a gamer doesn't have to like it. They can say, no, it doesn't all they want. That's an opinion. And so I've had people tell me, and I say this all the time, a group of people that all agree to something does not make a fact. It just makes a group of people that agree on the same concept. Now, if you have a room full of people, let's say 40 people, and one of those people in the room is different and has a different viewpoint of the other 39 people, then it becomes an issue of what is being talked about. No, I know what it means. What happens, let me explain why the phrase autism is funny to me when people use it. The phrase, the disability itself is not what I find amusing. What I find amusing is people saying it, not understanding what they're saying. So, have you ever listened to two people argue? They yell over each other. It's like watching Jerry Springer. They argue over each other. They will say, oh man, this conversation's autistic. That's retarded, because if the conversation was in fact autistic, the exact opposite would be happening, because autism uses the medical dictionary it uses the medical definition. It's a medical term. It's a medical disability. That's why it doesn't matter what Merriam-Webster says. It doesn't matter what Oxford says. The medical community has determined what the definition of that is. And since it's a medical ailment, the dictionary has no jurisdiction there. So that's the separation from it. So when you're two people yelling over each other is not autistic. That's an argument. That's just stupid people yelling at each other. And the reason why it's not autistic is because if you actually look up the medical definition of autism, the medical definition of autism is lack of communication because nobody can articulate an actual coherent sentence. People will try to say coherent with common sense. No. Coherent sentence is formulating an actual sentence to phrase it. Doesn't matter what it is. Like if I say, oh, the clock stopped and the mouse ran up the soap. That's an articulated sentence, even though it doesn't make sense. I was literally able to articulate a phrase to say. The point being is that an argument cannot be autistic. It's not even a thing. Because in order for it to be autistic, nobody would be able to even phrase an argument because the argument would be quiet. Autistic people cannot formulate coherent sentences, even if it would come out as nonsense. So this is why I find it amusing when people say, oh, this conversation is so autistic. Well, it's a lot. People like to use parts of a definition. Because if you notice, I said the very first thing I said, autism is the inability to have a conversation. That's not yelling, because there's a second part to what I said. Autism is the inability to formulate a coherent sentence. Or no, it's the inability to communicate effectively through the course of purposeful knowledge of formulating coherent sentences. See, there's a second part that people don't like to apply that applies to this. And so it's just funny to watch people like, oh, this conversation's autistic. If the conversation's autistic, this is what it's going to sound like. But I want to. That's what it is. There is no. You can't argument. Regardless of whether you're yelling, you're having a yelling match. That's not a form of incoherent. That's not a form of inability to communicate. That's a form of stupidity. That's a form of way. That's a way to formulate stupidity as a communication. That's a yelling thing. That's not an autistic thing. So it's just funny to watch when you understand these things. Now, keeping in mind, I paraphrase that. But the point being here is that the actual medical definition of autism takes precedence over the dictionary definition, regardless of what anybody thinks. Because it's a medical term. The medical community has precedence on this word because it's a condition. So that's really what my point is. So as I said, No, you didn't. It's all connected because these are all like speech things, and this is what it came down to inside Zenimax. So I mean, yeah, in a roundabout way it went off the rails, but that's fine. But I mean, I'm usually once I'm at this point in a stream, I've already talked about the main stuff at the beginning, so the rest of it's just filler. So it's actually good to engage in discussion because, case in point, okay, so. People love to contradict themselves and then say they're not contradicting themselves. So let me ask you a question. And just answer this either if you know it, answer it, and if you don't know it, guess. And I'll explain. I'm doing this to show you something when you're talking to people, the why talking to people is so ridiculous. And it's not just you. It's not just me. I'm an asshole when I talk to people. But the thing here is I won't argue points. I will literally bring up something that you can't argue with using your own argument. Not you, but in general. And then it's just funny to watch people squirm. It's so ridiculous. So, and that's what makes me an asshole. I'm an asshole, period. That's it. And I tell people, I don't give a fuck. Oh, you hurt my feelings. I'm like, okay, good. And? Well, don't you have any respect? You telling me I have to have respect is disrespectful, so no, fuck off. So, I mean, that's how I argue. So, I mean, there's a level of common decency, and then there's just stupidity. And so my channel focuses on stupidity. That's really all I do. So, let me ask you a question. Now, this is actually in my the list of 10 things idiots never apply to their own arguments. So, let me ask you. Because this has to do with, like, gender, okay? Because this pisses people off. But I don't talk about the normal shit. I go off the fucking rails and pull some really fucking weird, construct that makes you go, huh, that's fucking weird. And so it's not about proving it's right or wrong. It's about taking the structure of what somebody says and applying it to somewhere you can't argue against what you just said without you being stupid. And so when it comes to these debates, I think these debates are fucking the worst thing ever because they're dumb. Because you'll never convince anybody if you argue incorrectly. And even if you post facts, which somehow are not facts, despite them being facts, it doesn't matter. So let me bring you up to speed here. I'm going to ask you, what is a cat? No. This is just. You want to feel vulnerable? Go look at some of my fucking division streams. Go look at some of the division streams. I am literally laying into people in my stream that is being so fucking stupid, and they literally tried. They tried entrapping me in something, and I fucked them over so bad that they're like doing stuff. It's like, yeah, that's not happening. So don't feel bad. This isn't to you. This is just the conversation in general when I talk about this stuff, because I don't direct it at anybody. I just take elements that people discuss and I apply these really obscure situations to them that prove the point I'm making. And it's like, huh. Okay, so let me ask you a question. What is a cat? What's a cat? Okay, and this is the second question. And I have a third question. It doesn't matter. A cat, I'm just asking cat, because you can sit and define domestic, whatever, it doesn't matter. What's a cat? A house cat. Let me rephrase that. What's a house cat? So now just to give you an example, I set the premise up to show you the stupidity level of these arguments people like to use. So I do it in a very specific fashion, so at the end you go, yeah, that is pretty fucking stupid. So it's interesting to watch. Now I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm saying this is what I use to show how fucking stupid the people that argue about gender is. And I'm not saying the subject matter is dumb. I'm talking about what people say in their arguments to show you how fucking dumb they are. The argument itself is fucking stupid. It's a waste of time to even try to debate this. But if you're going to debate it, you might as well show people how fucking stupid the debate itself is. So that's where I came up with this specific thing. So what's a cat? Like a house cat. What's a cat? You can't really... The reason why I asked that is because you can't really define it. You know what a cat is, but there's no real... Yeah, and there's a dictionary definition, but there's no real way to actually define what a cat is. So that brings me to the next question. Is a cat a mammal? See, this is a yes or no question, because this is where things get interesting. So, is a cat a mammal? And if you need to, Google what a mammal is. And that brings me to the second question. Is a cat a mammal? Okay, what makes a mammal? So if a cat's a mammal, what makes a mammal? What is a mammal defined as? Well, regardless of whether the animal is domesticated or not, a cat is still a mammal. Whether it's a tiger, a lynx, a house cat, a wild cat, doesn't matter. It's still a mammal. So, if you're going to say a cat's a mammal, you have to I'm now asking you, what is the definition of a mammal? And you can look it up. I'm not telling you not to look it up. I'm just showing, I'm going to tie this together in a minute and you'll get what I'm talking about. Because I'm gonna expose a question to you that's gonna fuck you up. It's not fuck you up. It's like it'll fuck you up mentally, because this is what I'm doing. I'm showing you how stupid the debate is with these fucking arguments about gender. Do you want me to tell you what a mammal is? If you want to look it up, go ahead, but I'll just tell you what a mammal is. A mammal is anything that has hair on it and has teeth and can walk. That's what a mammal is. Now, would you consider a cat a mammal under those descriptions? No. A mammal has to do with fur. You as a human are a mammal. Okay? You have teeth and you walk. That's what a mammal is defined as. The cat having hair alone makes it a mammal. Okay, so now I'm going to fuck with you. Okay, so we've already determined that a cat's a mammal. Okay, so now I'm going to have you Google a picture of something. Give me 1 second to get the spelling right on this. Okay, I did it wrong. Here we go. Okay. I want you to Google a picture of a house cat. Doesn't matter. Just type in house cat in Google and go to images. Where do you see this? Where do you see where this is leading? And this is, so what I'm doing here is why it's kind of crucial that when you want to debate somebody that has these viewpoints, you become educated on what you're talking about by finding something so fucked up it screws their own argument up. It doesn't matter. Anything. So if you just house cat, whatever, okay? So it doesn't matter. The point being is I'm telling you to Google house cat, okay? Now, once you get that image up, I'm assuming your computer can use dual screen, like you can open up one picture on one side and one picture on the other. I then want you to Google that. That is called a Cornish Rex. Now, if we just agreed and you literally broke down a cat is a mammal because of the features it have, explain that. Then I'm going to propose a question. Now, I know what a Cornish Rex is. I know exactly what one is. Okay, so let me explain here. I'll explain where this is going, and then I'll tie this all together. A Cornish Rex is an English cat, or it's European descent. That's where they originally from. Or they look Egyptian, but they're not. They're kind of from British descent. They have no fucking hair on them. That being said, is a Cornish Rex a cat? If it's a cat, it's a mammal. If a mammal requires having hair, what the fuck is a Cornish Rex? That brings me to the entire point of this. People talking about gender, removing an element from the equation does not remove what the object itself is. Case in point, if you remove a guy's penis, he's still a fucking man. If you remove a girl's breasts, she's still a female. If you remove a girl's vagina and attach a penis, that's not going to make her a man, because removing something or adding something doesn't change the compound structure of it. Thus, and here's the question. If a cat is a cat because it has hair and everything else, what the fuck would you call a Cornish Rex? It's still a cat by definition, but why? That doesn't make any sense. In any more sense than to say, removing a guy's penis and turning it into a vagina somehow makes them a girl because you remove the penis. That means if I shave a cat bald, it's no longer a cat because what's making it a cat is the hair. My point being is removing the hair from a cat doesn't make the thing not a cat. It's still a fucking cat even though I removed the element from it to say so. Do you understand where this is going? So my point is, I pulled a Cornish Rex out because the people who like to discuss gender like to use these weird anomalies to try to invalidate the rest of the argument. That's why I use Cornish Rex, because that's why I brought up the argument the way I did. A cat is a mammal. What's a mammal defined as? But then I pulled out a Cornish Rex, and you're like, what the fuck is that? Because you just agreed with me that was done, and then I pulled out an anomaly. No, it's still a cat because it's defined as a cat. The hair on it doesn't matter. So, my point being is, if people are going to argue that because you remove a penis from a guy or put a penis on a girl and then somehow they're there, that means I can use the argument of if I shave a cat, it's not a cat because it doesn't have fucking hair. And and we agree that a cat is a mammal. So if I strip the hair off a cat, is it still a fucking mammal? Removing the hair from a cat does not make it not a fucking mammal. Removing a penis from a guy does not make the guy not a guy. You can't remove the basic biological structure from these arguments and then try to argue. It doesn't work. As I just proved, you can't, and here's the thing. People try to say, that's not the same thing. No, it is the same thing, because I just literally removed the hair from what is classified as a mammal. Removing the element that defines what it is doesn't make it not a mammal just because I remove the element. It doesn't work that way. It's still a fucking mammal simply because other elements are involved with that definition. Removing a man's penis does not make him not a man because there is structural confines that can't be altered. That is how stupid these fucking people sound when they argue. I just used a Cornish Rex as the anomaly to the cats in the same way these people who use, I forget the terminology for it, that, not asexual, they're, I can't remember the name of it, but hermaphrodites, not hermaphrodite, but it's some word that they use. But the anomalies don't invalidate the other, the other confined structure. It just doesn't. A Cornish Rex doesn't invalidate it being a cat just because it has no fucking hair if I just argued that it's a cat. It's an anomaly for the cat by weird standards, but it's still a cat nonetheless. But if I shave a cat, it's still a cat. It's still a mammal, even though I shaved it. Because the biological genetic structure makes it what it is. I can change the shape of it. I can cut off its fucking tail. It's still, that's mean. It's still a cat. It doesn't matter what I fucking do to it physically. It's still a fucking cat. You can't change what it is by altering certain things and say, oh, I removed it. That doesn't work. So you can't remove the biological structure and makeup of something to argue. It just doesn't work. So that's why I bring these up. So it's kind of interesting to watch the way I dismantle an argument and then throw something at people that they can't argue with. And what happens is they'll say, well, that's not the same thing, an animal and a human. No, it is the exact same. Hold on a second. Okay, so let me ask. So now, if you're gonna counter this argument, I talk about things that nobody else mentions. Okay, that's fine. If you're gonna say a man is a female, have a child, push a baby out of your body. Push a baby out of your body. Now, here is the baseline that I find very interesting. Okay, so let's go with biology is flexible. We'll say that. Okay, well, I'll even agree to that. Let me ask you a question. If people are going to say male and female don't exist, where are they getting their information to base the sex off of to begin with? You can't say male and female don't exist as a thing, or gender doesn't exist as a thing, and then say a trans man is a woman because you just acknowledged the baseline that sex exists. In order for you to have an argument to say something doesn't exist, you have to acknowledge of the existence of what you're arguing. So, in other words, you cannot argue a male and female don't exist unless male and female exist for you to base that assumption off of. And then you stayed and listened to this. So, as I said, you can't argue something doesn't exist without the basis of what you're arguing, acknowledging it does exist. You have to acknowledge the basis of your argument in order for you to argue against it. So, to say male and female aren't existent, that means you have no argument, because if they don't exist, then what the fuck are you arguing? Oh, by the way, if you want to hear something very interesting about the Van Helsing guide, by the way, where did you get that Van Helsing guide anyway? Did you get it off of Steam? Like off of like Steam somewhere? Because that's where I originally posted it. Or did you get it off of the channel? How did you even find me anyway? Like, how did you find this channel? I'm just curious. I don't actually advertise or link my videos anywhere. I don't even tag them. Like, I can pull up... Actually, I shouldn't say that. There's very few things that I tag. Okay, so you found it through Steam. So somebody obviously has enough common sense to realize that my guide was invaluable because that's the way it is. But, I mean, it's just kind of interesting because like, I don't tag my stuff. So I was like, how did you find this channel, though? Because under the guide, it was under my other YouTube channel before it got banned. Ah, okay. I didn't know it was... How, though? This channel's not connected to that, though. Oh, you mean my library here? So my question is, how did you find this channel, though? See, because here's the thing. The guide that I put up is under MPC for YouTube. It's not that channel's gone. So even if you were to look at it, how would you find this? That's my question. How did you even find this channel? Not that I give a shit. I was just curious. Because I'm always curious to how somebody actually finds me. Because I don't advertise my stuff anywhere. I don't even tag my videos. Because my videos are the way they are, they don't even show up in the freaking recommended search section, do they? I don't know. Because I'm always curious. I mean, good. I mean, because I make these videos because I make them. I'm not out to make money. I just like shitting on things. I'm such an asshole. Yeah, but that video goes to a separate channel, though. Like you're saying, it's the channel that video I just uploaded. I uploaded it, but oh, maybe I did link it. But the thing here is, it's linked to a banned YouTube channel. Like you can't even if you type in NPC for YouTube, it'll tell you the channel's banned or it doesn't exist or something like that. Because that's why it says this is NPC for YouTube, because that was my original channel name. So how would that link to this channel? That's what I don't understand. I know I put this video on this channel because I re-uploaded it because somebody asked me to. Actually, I shouldn't say somebody did. A couple people asked me to. But, I don't know. It's just weird. By the way, did the video, did the guide help you? Or no? There's some stuff that you can't do anymore. Like, there's some stuff that you just can't do anymore. Like, they changed it. Did I ever tell you that one of the people that was streaming Van Helsing, I caught them cheating? Oh, they fucking attacked me with that. Huh, that's weird. Okay, so anyway, the people that were streaming Van Helsing worked for the company. They were like testers for the company. So the interesting thing is that I caught one of them cheating online. I caught them cheating in a stream. I called them out on it. They fucking blacklisted me. Like, they blacklisted me consistently. Then, if that didn't end there, I actually had another friend of mine somehow found the blog post that this person wrote about me when I called them out, and trying to tell everybody else in this blog post I was toxic to the community. Unfortunately for him, I had recorded on video my entire Steam conversations with him when I had Steam through video, and then I posted that video in that blog as a reply to that blog. And I says, don't ever try to undermine me again, and don't try to fucking hide this because I'll find it. And it just kind of ended it from there. So that was kind of one of the things that I fucking started hating Valve on. So this is a long time ago because I'm against Valve. I fucking hate them. I hate Steam. I hate everything fucking about it. And I will tell people Steam is one of the most corrupted fucking entities on the face of this planet. Reddit is below Steam. That's how fucking bad Reddit is. And I fucking Steam is bad. But Reddit is just below Steam. Reddit is the cesspool of the internet. So anyway, I've been rambling on enough. I actually am going to end this stream because there's really kind of nothing really to talk about unless you want to fucking talk about whatever. But I'm going to do something I don't ever normally do. I have another YouTube channel. And so the other channel I do, it's really weird because people will look at this channel. Actually, I have two other YouTube channels. People look at this channel. I've mentioned them on this, but I don't usually announce one channel on the other. I don't usually ever announce that, just because it's weird because if you see this channel, you see a completely different persona than the other channels I have. That's because this channel, I always tell people, this channel is for purposes of when I talk to people and I get pissed off in a stream or whatever it is. It's not I'm pissed off. That is the atmosphere I use to kind of draw people in and say, hey, I'm going to talk to people the way they need to be talked to. And right now, that means I'm going to get really vulgar and brash because these fucking people are stupid. And so when I'm arguing with people on stream or whatever it is, they're trolling me, blah, blah, blah. That's just what this channel does. Somebody tells me, you can get more positive reviews. My channel's not being fucking positive. This channel's fucking horrible. Like I fucking swear at people. So it's not like that's what this channel is. I'm not gonna change what this channel's brand is. Fuck off. I'm not gonna do it. If you want to make it fucking, I tell people, go ahead, go make another channel. Go right ahead. The problem is that I don't like advertising. I have a separate channel because you look at it, it's like, what the fuck is this kid's like? This kid's got like, bipolar syndrome. He's all up on one. No, it's how fucking entertainment is. You can say the same thing about actors and actresses in movies, and a lot of people on YouTube. So that's why people, when I talk to them over the phone, they're like, "Holy shit, you sound so different." I said, "Yeah, that's because it's the way it is." So the one of the other channels I do, this is kind of interesting, is called Yeah, I talk fast. I really do. Okay, so this is the channel. I'm gonna give you my other channel. Now, what I'll explain about this is that I have another channel that uses a 360 camera. Like all the videos on there are basically 360 degrees. I don't know if you know anything about 360 degree video, but usually you can, rotate the camera around and shit like that. So if you see what else I do, you'd be like quite interested, because it's not just, I don't just do games, I do other things, but I don't announce these channels. Like, you have to know I have the channel. By the way, the sweatshirt I'm wearing is what I wear in the channel. I'm wearing it. You can't see the logo on it. But on that channel, I designed the logo. I came up with the t-shirts, everything you see. Like, I came up with the sweatshirts. I had them made. I had them, printed out. So I have like really good design work. So I've actually had people ask me where I get the lettering in my videos from, like where it says how I went about, taking Zenimax Online Studios to court. If you see that orange writing, people ask me like, where do you get your text from? I don't tell people where I get that from, because that's a place that I get it from. And so I have also, like, if you look at the text I do all sorts of like weird text, but I have a very specific place I get my text from. Or I should say the font and the colorization and stuff. That's why when you look at it, it's kind of like weird. So this channel that I'm about to put in the chat is actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a different video. Hold on, I'm going to end this stream, and I'm going to make another video that explains my other two channels. That's what I'm going to do. So if you want to hang out, fine. Bear with me. I'll be back. But for now, this is TL Gamer signing off. Have a good day and night wherever you are.